Chapter 2777. Felwood Sko didn't want to recommend Chun Zhao's private plane. In fact, the plane manufacturers found out that Felwood Sko was building a private airport for a rich person. That was why they asked Felwood Sko to recommend Chun Zhao. These manufacturers promised that if Chun Zhao bought their planes, they would give Felwood Sko a generous commission. But Felwood Sko was very clear about this. His main business was construction, not the commission for selling planes. That was why Felwood Sko only agreed to recommend Chun Zhao. Therefore, Felwood Sko only agreed to help with the referral. He didn't recommend any plane. Referral and recommendation were two different concepts. What the referral meant was, this is my friend who sells XXX products and wants to be friends with you. Recommendation was much more direct. My friend sells XXX products. You can consider their products. No matter how generous the plane manufacturers were, Felwood Sko wouldn't put the cart before the horse. After all, what Chun Zhao gave him was the foundation of a construction company. It wasn't a small profit like the commission. After all, a private plane was only tens of millions of dollars. The plane manufacturers wouldn't give him a commission of 10% or more. But the projects Chun Zhao gave him all had a profit of 20% or more. Also, he had the initiative in this kind of cooperation. After all, Felwood Sko was confident that his projects would be of high quality. But the quality of the planes the plane manufacturers sold to Chun Zhao was controlled by someone else. What time? Tonight. If it's not convenient, Mr. Chun, we can reschedule. Tonight? Sure. Chun Zhao accepted the invitation, although he didn't really like these gatherings. Still, he was very satisfied with the cooperation with Felwood Sko. So, he gave Felwood Sko some face. Chun Zhao chatted with Felwood Sko for a while longer. Felwood Sko promised to finish before the end of the year. Of course, if Chun Zhao needed to rush the deadline. He could also think of a way to build in stages and use a part of the airport first. This was all because he treated Chun Zhao differently. As long as Chun Zhao needed something, he could satisfy it. Felwood Sko was a busy man. Chun Zhao had things to do too. Then, Chun Zhao headed to the city. Ami Street. It was an old street. Most of the facilities were from the 70s and 80s. They looked rather old. There weren't many cars on the streets. Most of the shops along the street were closed. Even if they did open their doors, most of them had broken signboards. Chun Zhao drove back and forth on the street. After some time, he finally saw a gun shop. There was no sign at the door. If he hadn't seen the inside, he wouldn't have been able to find a gun shop. In fact, most of the shops on this street were supported by regular customers. Regular customers didn't need a signboard, and strangers wouldn't come here anyway. There were some guns hanging on the counter and walls of the gun shop, but most of the space was empty. It seemed that not only was the business bad here, but it was also about to close down. Seeing Chun Zhao come in, the owner lifted his eyelids. The one on the left is $80. The one in the middle is $120, and the ones over there are $200 to $300. The ones with labels are all legal, and the ones without labels are all illegal. Choose for yourself. Don't I need to register? In the United States, one needed a gun license to buy a gun. If there was even the slightest violation of the law, it would be canceled. Simply put, if the government thinks you're dangerous, then you can't carry a gun. Even if they could buy a gun, they would need to register it. The gun's model, caliber, production date, certificate, as well as the buyer's identity. You drive such a good car, you must be a rich man. A rich man coming here to buy a gun is definitely not to buy a gun through the legal channels. Or maybe he's not here to buy a gun at all. The shop owner yawned and said in an extremely lazy tone. The shop owner was obviously an experienced man. He could basically tell the background of the buyers who entered the shop with just a glance. But looking at Chun Zhao, he didn't really understand. After all, no rich people had ever come to his shop. Even if rich people really needed illegal guns, they'd get someone to buy them for them. They wouldn't have to buy them themselves. So, the owner was more inclined to think that this Asian was here to buy information. Ethan recommended me. He said that you can give me some information I need. The owner looked Chun Zhao up and down. You know that my fees are very expensive. Cash or check. Card is accepted. The owner took out the POS machine and placed it before Chun Zhao. What information do you want? Is the wild boar king dead or alive? Chen Zhao asked. Are you his friend or enemy? Is there a difference? My fees are very fair. If you're his friend, it's very expensive. If you're his enemy, it's even more expensive. Huh, it's indeed very fair. We're friends, Chen Zhao said. I left L.A. for more than 20 days. When I came back, I suddenly realized that L. seems to have changed. I can't contact the Wild Boar King either. $100,000. The owner pushed the POS machine to Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao swiped his credit card on it. Dead. Chen Zhao's face darkened. Are you messing with me? I said that my fees for information are all public, the owner said nonchalantly. I didn't force you. Then what about his wild boar? The shop owner saw the POS machine being delivered to Chen Zhao again. It's dead too. How? That boar has thick skin. It won't die so easily. Even a Terminator would be destroyed if it's being shot at by a dozen machine guns, let alone a pig. Chen Zhao didn't know how he should accept this. Victoria was the name Morgary had given it. But Chen Zhao was the one who created it, although Victoria didn't belong to Chen Zhao. However, Chen Zhao still had deep feelings for it. If only he could predict its current ending. Perhaps Chen Zhao would take Victoria back. How did Morgary die? Air crash. You're saying that the gangs in L.A. have the ability to cause a plane crash? Chen Zhao didn't believe the shop owner. What a joke. Causing an air crash was basically as difficult as starting a war. If the L.A. gangs could really do it, Chen Zhao wouldn't have to deal with them. The government would be the first to eliminate them. Of course, it's impossible to cause a plane crash in Los Angeles. But what if it was in Africa? Africa? You said Morgary went to Africa? Morgary received news that there was a diamond mine in Sierra Leone that was occupied by the rebels. The rebels did not intend to develop it. Instead, they sent out invitations to wealthy businessmen from all over the world to auction off the diamond mine. Morgary was attracted there, and then a plane crash happened. Chapter 2778. In other words, this is fake news? I don't know if it's fake or not, but Morgary's death is definitely not an accident. Is the LA gang completely controlled by the England gang now? Most of them are. There's still a few streets that aren't completely controlled, but the original rulers of those streets have already been defeated. They're not far from complete control. Give me the details of the England gang. This information is expensive, very expensive. How much? $1 million. If you can afford it, I'll even tell you what color underwear their boss is wearing today. Chen Zhao swiped $1 million. You don't have to tell me what color underwear their boss is wearing today. No, I mean what I say, the boss said firmly. When can I get the information I want? It'll take some time. How long? I'm very busy. Or you can organize the information and send it to my email. 30 minutes. So fast. Chen Zhao had thought that it would take at least a few days. He didn't think that it would only be 30 minutes. Was this some time? I could give it to you immediately, but I have to get the information on what color underwear the boss of the England gang is wearing today. Chen Zhao's face darkened. The boss laughed out loud. I'm just kidding. Just give me a few minutes. I'll organize the documents. A few minutes later, the boss printed the documents and handed them to Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao was about to leave when the boss suddenly called him. Sir, what is it? I don't know what you're planning to do with these documents. Maybe you're planning to take revenge for Morgary, but you better be careful. The England gang is a bit abnormal. Abnormal? What's abnormal? They're a group of extremely vicious thugs, the boss said meaningfully. Isn't that normal? I never expected them to be kindergartners. No, you don't understand what I mean. They're very good at killing, and they are very bloodthirsty. They are far more cruel than normal gangs. The shop owner looked at the calm Chen Zhao and said, maybe you have some extraordinary ability, but you should still remember my words, especially the core members of the England gang. They have committed many terrible crimes in Ohio and the border cities of the Maple Leaf Kingdom. They have also been attacked by professional mercenaries, but in the end, they were unscathed. The mercenaries who attacked them have now disappeared. Thank you for your kind reminder. Smiling, Chen Zhao walked out of the gun shop. The owner watched as Chen Zhao left. That guy was too confident. Could it be that the other party really had something special about him? Or could it be that his information had slipped away? The shop owner typed Chun Zhao's name into his computer. Chun Zhao had never told him his name, but the signature on the credit card receipt was Boss. The shop owner had been seriously searching for information on Chun Zhao. Suddenly hearing the sound of Chun Zhao's return, he was startled. Why did you come back? Don't try to find my information, and don't keep it. After all, I already investigated you before buying information from you. You don't want me to spend $10 million to kill you and your family, right? Fine. The shop owner shrugged helplessly. Sir, you misunderstood. Regardless, I don't want this misunderstanding to happen again. I promise. The shop owner said sincerely. There won't be a next time. He knew that some people were very dangerous. For example, they would use a fruit knife to cut open their carotid artery while they were sleeping. Or they would use a lot of money to hire someone to cut open their carotid artery with a fruit knife, so much that even they would be tempted. Therefore, for the safety of his family, the shop owner decided to erase all evidence of Chun Zhao's visit. It's nice to talk to smart people. Goodbye. Goodbye, sir. The shop owner sent Chun Zhao to the car. Only when Chun Zhao's sports car left his sight did the shop owner's expression change. They didn't have to face bullets in their line of work. However, the danger was no less than the professions fighting on the front lines. There weren't many ways to reduce the danger. One of them was to put away one's curiosity. Curiosity would kill people like them. Don't investigate people you shouldn't investigate. You'd really die. The shop owner dared to sell information about the English gang. That was because most people in the underworld knew about the English gang. The most he could provide was more secretive information. So, even if the English gang was attacked, they wouldn't know who sold them. There were too many people in LA who had information about them and were selling them. The shop owner wasn't the first person to have information about the English gang. But people like Chun Zhao were different. That kind of extravagant style was indeed very charming when it came to paying the bill. However, if he paid the assassins, it wouldn't be so fun. Moreover, the shop owner didn't just feel that Chun Zhao was rich. He also sensed danger from Chun Zhao. In fact, during their entire conversation, the shop owner had been hiding one hand under the table. There was a rifle stuck under the table. Thankfully, the thing he was worried about didn't happen. After Chun Zhao returned home, he took out the information he'd bought. However, the first thing was what color underwear the boss of the English gang was wearing today. Chun Zhao thought for a long time. Should he hire someone to kill the shop owner? But after some thought, he decided not to. That bastard wasn't worth that much money. Milo Tanzik Williams, the boss of the English gang. He wasn't old, only 33 years old. But he controlled the English gang for a long time, 16 years. Since he was 17, he'd taken over the English gang from his father. In 16 years, he'd replaced all the elders from his father's era. More accurately, all the elders from his father's era had gone missing, including his father. Chun Zhao had to admit that Milo Tanzik Williams was really ruthless. He was even like this to his father. There was no direct evidence that he'd done it, but some things didn't need evidence. However, when Chun Zhao read the following content, his expression changed. There was indeed something wrong with the English gang. Not only was there something wrong, but it was a concentration camp for lunatics. Chapter 2779. According to the report, there were 12 core members in the England gang. You didn't have to be good at fighting to become a core member. You didn't have to have many connections or be experienced. You didn't have to do anything. As long as you could do one thing, you could become a core member. Kill your wife and children. If you didn't have a wife and children, kill your parents. That was why Chun Zhao felt that the gang was a madman's gang. No wonder the gun shop owner had said that. The England gang was so cruel that it didn't make sense. Even a gang wouldn't have such a rule. In fact, most of the gang members in this world only wanted to survive. Only a few did it for profit. These were the facts that everyone knew. Perhaps there would also be those with abnormal minds who would kill to satisfy their own madness. It wasn't incomprehensible. After all, there were all kinds of birds in a big forest. But no gang was willing to recruit madmen. The England gang was the opposite. They didn't just recruit madmen. It looks more like a lunatic has taken control of the entire gang. In this world, there is only one reason for the existence of all the gangs, and that was profit. But Chen Zhao didn't think that killing indiscriminately, even killing one's family, wouldn't bring about profit. Other than proving that they were madmen, they wouldn't get anything. Were they going to use such crazy actions to scare their opponents? Chen Zhao felt that while they were madmen, they probably weren't idiots. After thinking for a while, Chen Zhao decided to show the report to West. This gang was clearly abnormal, very abnormal. Not long after sending it to West, West called back. "President, is this the England gang?" "Yes, you saw the report, right? What do you think?" "It's really a creepy gang. It's the scariest organization I've ever seen. It's even more evil and terrifying than some evil organizations in the spiritual world." "Do you think the England gang is related to some organization in the spiritual world? Or some shoemaker cult?" "It seems possible." Chen Zhao had wanted to go straight to the root of the gang and wipe it out. But now he dispelled that idea. If it was just a personal hobby of the boss of the English gang, Chen Zhao didn't mind giving him a few more days to live. If they had other forces behind them, Chen Zhao wouldn't mind killing a few more. In any case, it would be a waste of food to leave such a thing in the human world. In the evening, Chen Zhao received another call from Fellwood to confirm if Chen Zhao had left. Chen Zhao was quite serious about punctuality. Chen Zhao didn't like being late. He didn't like making people wait. When he arrived at Fellwoodsko's villa, there were already many guests. Fellwoodsko's house was not small either. He was a rich man himself. Moreover, in the past 2 years, his company's business had expanded and made a lot of money. "Welcome, Mr. Chen." "Thank you." Fellwood held his wife's arm and introduced them to Chen Zhao. His wife, Delia, looked to be about the same age as Fellwoodsko. She was a gentle and dignified woman. Then, he entered the villa. Fellwood introduced his 2 children to Chen Zhao, a 14-year-old boy and a 7-year-old girl. Fellwoodsko had put a lot of effort into the party. After that, the guests arrived one after another. Fellwood couldn't stay with Chen Zhao the whole time. After greeting Chen Zhao, he went to welcome the other guests. Before long, Fellwoodsko and an old man with silver hair walked over. "Mr. Chen, allow me to introduce you to my friend Bingerly Lang, the Vice President of Northern Gravity. This is Zhao, a successful entrepreneur and the owner of Dashin Beer." "Hello, Mr. Bingale." "Hello, Mr. Chen. I'm a loyal customer of your beer." Although Bingley Lang wasn't young, he was very relaxed. Even though Chen Zhao knew why he had asked Fellwood Scott to introduce him to him, Chen Zhao didn't care. He didn't go straight to the point. Instead, he used a friendly tone to get closer to Chen Zhao. "Another friend is here. I'll go greet them first. You guys talk." Fellwoodsko gave Chen Zhao and Bingerly some space to chat privately. Bingo Lang took the initiative to talk to Chen Zhao about wine. They also talked about the various types of alcohol in China. He seemed to think that since Chen Zhao was a beer producer, he should be very familiar with and interested in alcohol culture. After talking about alcohol for more than 10 minutes, Bingerly Lang finally entered the main topic. "Mr. Chen, I heard that you're considering buying a private jet?" "Yes, that's my plan." Even without Fellwoodsko's gathering, Chen Zhao planned to start evaluating private jet manufacturers. "Mr. Chen, do you have any planes in mind? Or do you have any plans?" "Not yet. You know that I'm just a beer seller. I'm still very unfamiliar with planes." "Do you think Northern Gravity's products can satisfy your needs?" "I'm not very familiar with your company's products yet." "Then, Mr. Chen, do you mind if I take some time to introduce our products to you?" "Of course. I'll try to skip the professional knowledge." "Of course not. Actually, I'm quite interested." "First, may I ask what price you considered? A large plane or super large plane?" "I'm more inclined to build a sky villa. Ignoring the price of the interior design, I can accept the basic price within $1 billion. 2 medium-sized planes that can carry at least 15 passengers and require a certain amount of entertainment and rest space. Each unit should be within $100 million. 1 seaplane and 1 helicopter." Bingerly Lang's eyes shone with passion. This was a big order. "Mr. Chen, Northern Gravity's main products are large planes and super large planes. Currently, we have one. 44% of the world's large commercial planes, and our market satisfaction is as high as 95%, much higher than Boeing and Airbus. What Bingerly Lang meant was that while they sold fewer planes, their products were better. However, this also showed the difference between Northern Gravity and aviation giants like Boeing and Airbus. Boeing and Airbus's market share was more than 30% and 20% respectively. The two giants combined had more than 60% of the market. On the other hand, Northern Gravity only had a pitiful 44%. Because of this, as the vice president, Bingerly Lang had to personally promote their products, because every order was crucial to them. Chapter 2780. The gravity of the North naturally had its advantages. For example, their engine technology could be super silent. This was an advantage that other manufacturers didn't have. There was also the price of the plane. Compared to the giants in the aviation industry, Northern Gravity's products were cheap and good. Just then, Felwoodsko brought two more people over. "Ah, Mr. Chun, what are you talking about?" One of them asked. "You are." Chun Zhao wasn't surprised that they knew him. After all, they were all rich people. There were many rich people in America, but not many were as rich as Chun Zhao. Chun Zhao had attended a few rich gatherings and occasionally met some people at the gatherings. Basically, he would look up and then forget about them. "Did you forget about Ms. Zola's party last time?" "Oh, Mr. Lijuoma, hello. I'm sorry I didn't recognize you immediately. Are you talking about planes? Do you mind if we join?" Lijuoma asked, smiling. Ben Gale was naturally unhappy, but he couldn't do anything about it. After all, he wasn't the owner or the main character of the night. "Mr. Lijuoma, do you know about planes too?" "I'm a private plane agent." Lijuoma smiled at him. "You can buy planes from all manufacturers, including Mr. Bengale's Northern Gravity products." "Then Mr. Lijuoma must know a lot about planes too." "Not really. I'm only familiar with them. If you're talking about research, it's Professor Singh beside me. He's an expert in aerodynamics and mechanics. He's also my professional consultant." Lijuoma had clearly come prepared. He'd even brought an expert. "So if I tell you the functions and uses that I need, will Professor Singh be able to tell me the one that suits me the best?" "Everyone has their own opinions. I can't say that my answer is correct. I can only use my professional knowledge and personal opinion to recommend the most suitable one for you, Mr. Chun." As expected of an academic, Singh was very careful with his words. "Mr. Chun, why don't you try?" "Okay, what I need is a spacious plane that can allow my family and even my pets to move around. At the same time, there must be enough space for me to rest, eat, and even take a shower on the plane without feeling cramped. I hope that what I can do in my villa can also be done on the plane." "What's the price?" Professor Singh asked. "The budget is around $500 million, but if there's a better choice, the price could be adjusted." "Mr. Chun, $500 million is enough to buy two C-17 cargo planes. Of course, the C-17 cargo plane is not suitable to be used as a private plane. Although the C-17 cargo plane has excellent long-distance flight capabilities, load capacity, and internal space, the loud engine noise makes even the crew have to wear soundproof headphones, so it's very difficult to use it as a private plane. Mr. Chun, what you want is a palace in the sky, so there are still a few large planes that meet your requirements. For example, the Boeing 747-8. This plane's most famous advertisement is that it's the flying car of the President of the United States. Another example is the Airbus A380 and A321, which are typical palaces in the sky. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of the three you mentioned? First of all, in terms of price, the A321 was developed and produced 20 years ago. 20 years is the time when the aviation industry is changing, so the price is relatively affordable. The price of a bare plane is between $110 million to $120 million. Secondly, the Boeing 747-8 exists as the opposite of the Airbus A380. This is a competition between the two civil aviation giants, so the price and performance of the two can be compared in all aspects. It's also the most representative large civil aircraft of this era. The more Professor Singh said, the angrier Lang's face became. But it was difficult for him to refute because Professor Singh didn't mention his product at all. And that was the most embarrassing thing about Bingerly Lang. The price of the Boeing 747-8 is around $350 million, while the Airbus A380 is close to $450 million. In terms of price, the Boeing 747-8 is naturally more affordable, but the Airbus 380 is actually better in this aspect. In terms of range, interior space, noise, flying speed, and even fuel consumption, the Airbus A380 is undoubtedly the top technology. The Boeing 747-8 is actually an upgraded version of the old 747. There's no leap in technology, just optimization. Mr. Chun, your plane can't be changed every 2 years. It will be used for the next 20 years, or even longer. After 20 years, you won't still be using technology from 40 years ago, right? Chun Zhao nodded in agreement. Just then, Bingo Lang could not help but say, our S10 is also a new generation of technology and model. Professor Singit raised his hand and waved. We're about to talk about the S10. Mr. Lang, please calm down. Lang's expression didn't improve because Professor Singit wasn't his man. Therefore, he couldn't control what the professor said. S-10 Super Civil Aircraft. Am I right? Bingri Lang nodded. Professor Singit continued. As one of the few super-large commercial aircraft models in the world, the S-10 is naturally the best super-large commercial aircraft of this era. It has an internal space of nearly 3,000 square meters, almost 5 times that of a Boeing 747-8. If the interior is decorated, the internal space is estimated to exceed 5,000 square meters, which is already equivalent to the size of a small shopping mall. But as a super-large commercial aircraft, this kind of space is only a matter of course. It can only be regarded as a standard configuration, and in terms of maximum range and fuel consumption, the S-10 has no advantage. Next is the price. The price of the Bear plane is $810 million US dollars, and the research and development cost is more than $20 billion US dollars. But so far, not a single one has been sold. The S-10 hasn't failed yet. Facts speak louder than words, Professor Singit said with a smile. Professor Singit smiled and said, as a civilian aircraft, the S-10 is not qualified, unless Northern Gravity can find enough rich people who are willing to spend $800 million US dollars to buy it and at least $300 million US dollars to decorate it. Doesn't the S-10 have any advantages? Chen Zhao asked. Yes, ultra-quiet technology. This is what Northern Gravity is most proud of. As we all know, the engine noise is unavoidable when taking a plane, and Northern Gravity's ultra-quiet technology is currently the most advanced. At the same time, the S-10 also has a decompression device that can stabilize the air pressure inside the fuselage within 100 meters. Chapter 2781. The fuel consumption is almost twice that of a Boeing 747-8. The same distance, but it's as slow as a snail. Chen Zhao was tempted. Mr. Bingerly, do you have detailed data on the S-10? Everyone was stunned and looked at Chen Zhao in surprise. Professor Singit was also stunned for a second. Then he suddenly realized something. Chen Zhao had said that he needed a palace in the sky. In the civil aviation market, it was almost useless. Chen Zhao didn't care about it. However, the advantages that didn't matter in the civil aviation market were the key to Chen Zhao's attraction. Expensive price, spacious and bright interior, silence, and a good flying environment were what Chen Zhao needed. So what if it was slow? This kind of plane must be used by a family for a trip. He wasn't in a hurry at all. What he wanted was a good traveling experience. Flying across the Pacific Ocean in one day was fine, even if it took him a day and a half. What he needed was to enjoy the journey to the extreme. The S-10 is indeed the most suitable for a palace in the sky, Singit said. Bingerly didn't expect such a turn of events. Yes, I have detailed data. Mr. Chun, can you wait for 30 minutes? I'll have someone send it over. Of course, no problem. Chen Zhao nodded. Professor Singit, can you tell me about other mid-tier models? Of course. It's my honor. Professor Singit then introduced a few well-known commercial aircraft manufacturers, from the manufacturer's history and culture to the price, advantages and disadvantages of the various models produced by them, as well as characteristics. Gulfstream, Legat, Airbus, Boeing, and Bombardier Worldwide were the ones Professor Singh introduced. Chen Zhao liked Gulfstream and Bombardier Worldwide the most. It wasn't just because of their performance, but also because of their popularity. However, he hadn't decided yet. The S-10 was also Chen Zhao's favorite model. If there weren't any other suitable models, Chen Zhao would consider getting this model. There were a few more guests who wanted to come over. However, they were all stopped by Felwood Scott. To put it bluntly, these guests were here to build relationships and expand their networks. However, these guests weren't of the same level. In Felwood Scott's words, these people weren't qualified. Half an hour later, Bingo Lang's people delivered the information Chen Zhao wanted. Chen Zhao looked at the documents. At the same time, Bingo Lang's subordinates gave more detailed and professional explanations. Mr. Bingale, I'm quite satisfied with the S-10. In the next few days, I'll look into the relevant information and give you an answer as soon as possible. Of course, I look forward to your reply. Bingerly Lang was satisfied with the current outcome. He didn't expect Chen Zhao to reply immediately. After all, this was a deal that involved nearly $1 billion USD. What they traded was not a toy, but a real plane. Chen Zhao's interest in S-10 had already exceeded his expectations. Mr. Chen, can we exchange contact information? Lijuoma also requested. Chen Zhao also agreed. Of course, he gave Porsche's number. Under the night sky, Chen Zhao didn't walk on the roads in the city. Instead, he walked on the roads in the suburbs. Suddenly, a shooting star shot out from the grass by the roadside. The flaming tail hit Chen Zhao's car directly. Bang! It was a rocket fired from a rocket launcher. The car flipped to the ground, flames burning wildly. Just then, two people popped their heads out from the roadside. Then, a few more people followed. Fuck, Tim, why did you shoot the car? I want you to shoot the road in front of him. Fuck, do you think you can shoot this thing wherever you want? One of them was tall, and the other was short. The short fatty called Tim put down the rocket launcher on his shoulder. What we do? Looks like the mission boss gave us failed. It's all your fault, idiot. Doreg, if you say one more word, I'll shove this up your ass, Tim said in annoyance. Whoosh! Suddenly, the wind became piercingly cold. The blazing sports car was reduced by the sudden gust of wind. The flames seemed to be compressed continuously. In the end, they disappeared. The thick black smoke seemed to be sucked in by a vacuum cleaner. No matter how much came out, it was absorbed by a single point. This strange scene attracted Tim and Doreg's attention, as well as their subordinates. They didn't understand what was going on with this obviously abnormal scene. Clang! The sports car, which had been completely burnt to ashes, suddenly flipped over. Something seemed to have flipped the car over from below. Everyone saw the person who should have been dead walk out of the car. Without hesitation, Tim raised the rocket launcher and aimed at the person. Whoosh! Boom! The rocket accurately hit the person. However, no one looked happy at all. The impact of the explosion only spread out briefly. The next moment, it shrank in a way that defied the laws of physics. The person was unharmed. The explosive flames kept shrinking in his hand until they were completely extinguished. Under the night sky, the person's eyes glowed red. Chen Zhao patted the dust off his body and looked at the group of people calmly. Run! The group of people dispersed in an instant. However, the first person who started running turned into ashes as he ran. Without my permission, whoever moves will die. Whoever opens their mouth will die. The people who'd wanted to escape during the chaos all froze. Everyone nodded involuntarily. Chen Zhao glanced at the people before him. There seemed to be too many people alive. I don't want to save me. Half of the people suddenly turned into sparks. Tim just watched as Doreg turned into sparks. The remaining half felt like their scalps were going to explode. A chill swept through their bodies. It was just such an absurd reason. Just because there were too many people alive, half of them had been turned into ashes. The man before them was more terrifying than they'd imagined. Everyone was trembling, and not a single one of them was not regretting it. Why had they accepted this mission? Why had they encountered such a demon? Yes, in their eyes, Chen Zhao was a demon. Okay, it's your turn. Chun Zhao looked at the other half. Feeling Chun Zhao's gaze, everyone lowered their heads. No one wanted to be stared at by a demon. Who told you to kill me? Tell me. Chun Zhao pointed at Tim. Tim looked up and said without hesitation, Sir, we're not here to kill you. We're here to kidnap you. Chapter 2782. Since when did a rocket launcher become a standard for kidnappers? Chun Zhao was sure that a rocket launcher was not needed for a kidnapping. There really was no need. At least, not for a normal person. If the target was a monster, a rocket launcher was not enough at all. Are you kidding me? No, we're really here to kidnap. Are you so amateurs that you confuse kidnapping with murder? Facing Chun Zhao's mockery, they really wanted to say that they were professionals, but they did not have the courage to say it. Tim was helpless too. Of course, he knew what a normal kidnapping required, but the higher-ups only provided this thing. He had only planned to use the rocket launcher to scare Chun Zhao, but it was also his first time using it. This thing was too difficult to use. After firing it, there would be another 0.5 seconds of ignition time. It was this 0.5 second that caused him to misjudge the situation. Who sent you? The boss of the English gang, Milo. So you're from the English gang? No, we're not. You work for the English gang, and now you're telling me you're not? We were forced to do this. We were originally just a small local gang. After the English gang came, they killed our boss and took us in. They also threatened us that if we didn't work for them, they would kill our whole family. Not only me, but almost all the other local gangs suffered the same fate. Just then, Chun Zhao's phone rang. Hello, Mr. Chun? Felwood, what's up? Did something happen to you on the way? Chun Zhao was surprised. How did Felwood know that something had happened to him? Did it have something to do with him? That couldn't be right. If it really had something to do with him, he should not be calling him now. What happened? Felwood, why do you ask? Among the guests I invited just now, 2 of them had an accident on the road. One of them was just attacked, but he was lucky enough to escape. But the other one wasn't so lucky. He and his driver were shot by a group of gangsters with heavy machine guns. Now the police have informed me. After all, those who had an accident were my guests. It's good that you're fine. I'm fine. Thank you for your concern. Let me know if you have any news. I'll be home soon. That's all for now. After hanging up, Chun Zhao looked at Tim and the others. You're not the only attackers? As far as I know, several groups of people are targeting the tycoons of Los Angeles. Tim was filled with regret. Why did he pick such a target? Any other target would be better than this demon in front of him. It seemed that the English gang was really lawless. It is not surprising that they would target the wealthy. The kidnappers were naturally rich people. But he wasn't making a move, he was delivering a challenge to the rich. If it was just a rich man who was attacked and killed, the others would only watch the show. But now, several, or even more than a dozen rich people were attacked at the same time. That would be a huge problem. America was a country ruled by the rich. Therefore, it was time to delve deeper into the matter. The English gang was issuing a challenge to the U.S. government. Basically, they did everything that the gangs couldn't do. If more than 10 tycoons were attacked or killed in one night, it would cause social unrest. And those tycoons, as well as the connections they could influence, would instantly release a terrifying amount of energy. Take Chun Zhao, for example. As a member of the rich, Chun Zhao would not let it go so easily. Of course, if Chun Zhao was just an ordinary person, he would at most buy media coverage for a few days. Otherwise, he would find someone with influence, like Steven or Rasfa, who often appeared in public. Or he could pressure the local police to arrest the suspects as soon as possible. If he was more impulsive, he could just hire mercenaries and destroy the gang's headquarters. Ordinary tycoons could only do this much. Chun Zhao clearly did not plan to follow this plan. While Chun Zhao was thinking, Tim's eyes flashed. Sir, I heard that a few core members of the English gang are unusual too. Oh, you know? Chun Zhao could not help but look up at Tim. How much do you know? I didn't see it with my own eyes, but there's a rumor that a core member of the English gang once used a car as a baseball bat to hit people in public. In the past, Tim had also treated this rumor as a joke. But after what happened tonight, Tim believed the rumor. There really were things in this world that he did not know and did not understand. I have a way to find out the core secrets of the English gang, Tim said mysteriously. How can I believe you? Sir, do you know any magic curses that will kill me horribly if I break my promise? Tim was also gambling. He was betting that Chun Zhao would let him live for the English gang's information. Chun Zhao glanced at Tim and suddenly snapped his fingers. Instantly, all of Tim's subordinates screamed in pain. Their skin was being torn. Their blood was seeping out from under their torn skin. Then it gathered before Tim. Tim looked at the floating ball of blood before him in shock. He could feel that something was about to happen. As expected, his uneasy premonition came true. The ball of blood suddenly slammed into his chest. Tim was sent flying. When he climbed up with difficulty, he felt extreme pain in his chest. He tore open his shirt and found a bulging piece of flesh on his chest. The piece of flesh was still beating in time with his heart. This is the curse you want. Chun Zhao grabbed at the air. Tim immediately felt as if his heart was being held in someone's hand, making it hard for him to breathe. This is a flesh curse. If you dare to betray me, I only need to grab lightly, and you'll die no matter where you hide. Tim was terrified, but Chun Zhao sneered inwardly. There was no curse. The piece of flesh on Tim's body was actually his. It wasn't a flesh curse at all. As for the suffocation he felt, it was even simpler. Chun Zhao was just using the small world to slightly suppress the air around him. Tim thought that he had grabbed his heart. As long as Tim left his small world in attack range, there was nothing Chun Zhao could do. Of course, if Tim really betrayed him, Chun Zhao had ways to deal with him. Tim was a normal person. Chun Zhao had ways to deal with him. Chapter 2783. Chun Zhao had suspected that the core members of the England gang were cultists. Or rather, they were cultists to begin with. Chun Zhao really couldn't think of a second possibility. The next day, Chun Zhao heard about what had happened last night. Two rich people who'd attended the dinner with Chun Zhao had been attacked. One of them had died on the spot. Nearly 20 rich people in LA had been attacked on the road, in their companies, or at home. 2 had died, had been injured, and 2 had gone missing. All the kidnappers had used heavy weapons. Once this was reported, it caused an uproar. The authorities were even on high alert. If the people had been attacked were ordinary people, even 200 wouldn't attract the attention of the authorities, let alone 20. But the influence of 20 rich people wasn't something 200 ordinary people could compare to. They and their connections, as well as many unrelated tycoons, all mobilized their power. In one day, all of LA, and even all of America, was in a huge uproar. Even the Department of National Defense announced that they were willing to clean up some cities by force. Of course, the security department wasn't willing. At the same time, they said that they could handle it themselves. What Chun Zhao didn't expect the most was that the supernatural organization would be the one to deal with it. The news reached Chun Zhao on the second day of the incident. President, the security department gave us an order through Mansari. They want us to deal with the LA gang. I didn't expect the security department to ask us to deal with the gang. I also didn't expect the order to come through Mansari. I thought that even if the mission was given by the security department, Mansari would take it. Their psionic team should be able to do it too, right? President, Toddy Belster sent news that they fought yesterday. I heard that the new psionic team didn't win. Huh? West's words caught Chun Zhao's attention. The psionic team didn't win? They didn't lose either. It was a draw. We wanted to do a surgery and eliminate their core members, but we didn't catch a single one. A few new members were also injured. Toddy Belster didn't do anything? Chun Zhao asked, surprised. He knew that Toddy had become the trump card of the psionic team. Chun Zhao didn't expect that he would let Toddy Belster infiltrate the psionic team. But it made Toddy Belster an important figure in the psionic team. Of course, Chun Zhao didn't let Toddy Belster touch the psionic team. It was best for Chun Zhao and the supernatural organization to maintain his current identity. Actually, there was a need for a psionic team to exist as well. After all, the psionic team was a tool to keep the supernatural organization in check. At the very least, he had to make the security department think that the psionic team could keep the supernatural organization in check. The supernatural organization had to maintain their dominance. This would ensure the interests of the supernatural organization. Now, the supernatural organization was doing well. Although Mansari was against it, he still needed to give it a large amount of money every year. It was because he knew that the psionic ability team was not important. There were many things that needed the supernatural organization's help. For example, this incident. They couldn't even handle a gang. That was a little too shameful. Regardless of the reason, this was an indisputable fact. Toddy Belster didn't do anything, Wes said. His role in the psionic team is similar to your role in the supernatural organization, Wes said. We can't let him do everything. If he has to do something like clearing out gangs, it'll be too embarrassing for them. Chen Zhao thought about it. It made sense. If they used all their trump cards, it would be too embarrassing for them. As a force in the spiritual world, it would be too embarrassing. But the psionic team was still embarrassing. They had mobilized a lot of people to do it, but they hadn't gotten the results yet. Now, they had to fight against them. Was there anything more embarrassing than this? Anyway, Chen Zhao felt that they should be embarrassed. That was the truth. Vestana, Mansari, and Toddy Belster were sitting in the conference room of the psionic team's new headquarters. Britz lowered his head and didn't say a word. There were two groups of people sitting below, and they were the newly recruited members. Britz was the person in charge of last night's operation. He'd thought that it would be a one-sided victory. This should have been a victory without any suspense. But the result made everyone's jaw drop. They didn't win. They didn't even leave a single person alive. The core members of the England gang escaped calmly. Was there anything more hopeless than this? Brits had recruited these new members into the psionic team. Most of them weren't outstanding, and there were even some who were relatively young. But they had no problem dealing with normal people. Plus, they had quite a lot of people. Plus, they had excellent equipment and expensive magic tools. Even against people from the spiritual world, they had a chance of winning. But when they surrounded the England gang last night, their performance could only be described as unsightly. In a one-on-one situation, they actually didn't win a single one. Of course, the core members of the England gang weren't normal people either. But this definitely wasn't the reason for their failure. In the operation last night, the only one who had a result was Britz. He'd led the team last night. He'd injured 3 core members of the England gang and even captured 2. Unfortunately, 5 of them had been captured. Then the 2 sides could only exchange prisoners. At the end of the day, he'd also failed in leading the team last night, because his role wasn't to fight personally. He was to command and control the situation. But the operation last night was completely out of his control, not to mention controlling the situation. In that chaotic situation, not a single one of them had died. That was already a huge gain. I don't want to explain my mistake, Britz finally said. I'll take full responsibility for the failure last night. I'm willing to accept punishment. Actually, everyone knew that the psionic team was supported by Toddy Belster now. Blitz's strength wasn't bad, but it could only be considered good in the end. He didn't match the word expert and was far from the top. Mansari and Vestana were disappointed too. They had the history of the supernatural organization. In the past, the supernatural organization was even worse than the psionic team. But ever since Chen Zhao took over, the organization soared. Their strength increased by leaps and bounds. They'd thought that they could replicate Chen Zhao's miracle. But reality proved that they'd been overthinking. Chapter 2784. Back then, the supernatural organization had wanted anyone. For example, an elite who sold insurance or Morid who wasn't mainstream. Almost all of them were useless. There was also a Duz who was just an ordinary person. Another example was Jalanesh. She was the weakest in her family and had been kicked out. She would be treated as a genius and expert in the supernatural organization. In comparison, their psionic team had a much better start. But why was the result so different? The members had been carefully selected too. At least to them, these members might not be strong now, but they all had some potential. So they were confident in the future of the psionic team. But confidence couldn't be eaten with food. At least they couldn't eat now. They had experts like Chen Zhao too. Toddy Belster was undeniably strong. She was their trump card. They felt that if they were facing some extremely difficult missions, Toddy Belster could do them all. But that wasn't the problem now. Instead, it was because they had failed the simplest of tasks. No need to say useless things. Tell me the details. Toddy Belster waved her hand, interrupting Britz's self-blame. To avoid the next failure, we have to summarize the reason for this failure. Not strong enough, not prepared enough, or was there some other reason? The core members of the English gang are all awakened, Britz said. They're not very strong, but they're very difficult to deal with. Awakened? Impossible. I've investigated the core members. None of them are awakened. They should all be normal people. Of course, Vestana couldn't accept this result because she'd been the one who'd investigated and provided the information. If Britz said that they were all awakened, it meant that she had failed in her job. Ms. Vestana, I'm not trying to shift the blame, Britz said. I'm just stating the facts. Vestana crossed her arms in front of her chest, dissatisfaction written all over her face. Speed, teleportation, flame, petrification, spirit, sharp blade. In short, those people all have dangerous abilities. However, most of them aren't very strong, and they seem to be very rusty. However, their boss is very powerful. Even I don't have the confidence to escape unscathed. Britz looked at Toddy Belster. In the psionic team, I'm afraid only Master Toddy can defeat their boss. The higher-ups couldn't help but frown. Blitz actually compare the Mafia boss to Toddy Belster? Is that guy really that dangerous? Vestana couldn't help but ask. Yes, but it seems like he has some misgivings and didn't go all out. Moreover, he isn't as crazy as I thought. He seems more rational. According to the information they received, the England gang and their boss, Milo Tanzik Williams, were a bunch of complete lunatics. But to Britz's surprise, the first time he met Milo Tanzik Williams, he did not sense his madness. On the contrary, he felt calm and restrained. That was definitely not the quality of a lunatic. I heard that all core members have a special characteristic. Vestana glanced at the crowd. Killing his own parents, wife, and children. Do you think this kind of person is not crazy? Everyone below felt a chill run down their spines. The England gang has a total of 23 core members and 23 lunatics. I suspect that Milo Tanzik Williams believes in some unknown evil god, Britz said. The so-called core member requirement is more like some kind of sacrifice. If you want that power, you have to kill your own family. Vestana narrowed her eyes. How does that Milo Tanzik Williams compare to the president of the supernatural organization? Toddy Belster was speechless. Why did he have to compare with that guy? He was a real monster. Britz had seen Chun Zhao fight twice. The level difference is too big, Britz said. There's no comparison. Of course, Britz knew what Vestana was thinking. She wanted the supernatural organization and the England gang to fight to the death. Then, the psionic team would reap the benefits. However, that was obviously impossible. Actually, he had compared Chun Zhao, Toddy Belster, and Milo Tanzik Williams' abilities. Without a doubt, Chun Zhao was the strongest. He had only seen Chun Zhao fight a few times. Moreover, Chun Zhao had never used his full strength before him. However, even if it wasn't his full strength, it was still shocking. Next was Toddy Belster. Toddy Belster was also an unfathomable powerhouse. To Britz, even if Toddy wasn't as strong as Chun Zhao, she wouldn't be much weaker. Toddy Belster was their ace. She was also their confidence against the supernatural organization. As for Milo Tanzik Williams, he was very strong. However, this kind of strength could be predicted. It was different from the first two. The first two were unfathomable and unimaginable. Tim, don't show yourself for a few days. It's very chaotic outside. Tim received a call from his brother. Bodhi, how's the situation? When I went to the headquarters this morning, I found that it was full of police officers and the headquarters was completely surrounded. Boss and I are in a hidden place. Don't ask too much. It's not good for you. Brother, you're not in danger, right? It's not the police this time, but it's more troublesome, Bodhi said. Hearing his brother's words, Tim felt even more uneasy. Bodhi, can you tell me what's going on between Boss Milo and you? Tim asked in a low voice. Knowing too much will only put you in greater danger. You're my only family. I don't want to hurt you. Bodhi, I'm in big trouble now, Tim said. What trouble? Remember that 2 nights ago, I accepted a mission to ambush a tycoon. Yes, the mission failed. I heard that you blew him up with a rocket launcher. Actually, he didn't turn to dust. He walked out of the flames, and with one glance, all my men turned to dust, Tim said. Tim said, I survived because he wanted me to be a spy, and he put a curse on me. If I can't bring him any useful information, he can kill me with a single thought. Who is he? I'll go kill him. Chapter 2785. Bodhi, you can't beat him. You can't understand his strange power at all. Do you think he's the only person in the world with strange power? Bodhi, just like you thought, I have it too. But how do you have it? Tim asked, confused. Don't ask. Tim knew that Bodhi's next sentence would be knowing too much is not good for you. Nevertheless, Tim still had basic judgment. There should be strong and weak people like you, right? Of course, but if you know who's behind me and bestowed me power, you won't doubt if I can beat the enemy. Then who's behind you? Don't ask. Nevertheless, Bodhi's words still piqued Tim's interest. If Bodhi could really kill that man, then he wouldn't have to be afraid anymore. Bodhi, that guy is really scary. Are you sure you want to fight him? Don't worry. I can't fail. My power comes from God. Despite Bodhi's words, Tim was still worried. That man had left too deep an impression on him that night. Aren't you in trouble with Boss Milo? It's a bit troublesome, but it's not unsolvable. Plus, I'm not completely controlled by him. Completely controlled? Bodhi, what do you mean? Don't ask. I don't know where the core members of the England gang are hiding. They've been hiding ever since the battle with the psionic team. What about them? Chen Zhao asked, annoyed. They didn't give us any information at all? The security department and the psionic team were picking up trash for them. They could try first. If they couldn't beat them, they could leave the mess to the supernatural organization. Of course, this could also be understood as relying on them. But Chen Zhao was still annoyed. West shook his head. They're looking too, but it's like they've disappeared from the world. Our intelligence sources are limited. Intelligence had always been the supernatural organization's weakness. It was also an insurmountable barrier for the organization to reach the top. Building an intelligence network couldn't be done with just a few dollars. It wasn't something the supernatural organization, which had less than $100 million a year, could build either. He couldn't use his own money to subsidize the supernatural organization. Moreover, they did not have any professional intelligence personnel. Therefore, the vast majority of information still had to be obtained through external sources. For example, the underground intelligence network of normal people or the people on the streets were the sources of information for the supernatural organization. And now, this inadequacy was also revealed in this sexual encounter. Although the English gang has gone into hiding, they have not stopped targeting the rich. Yesterday, 2 more rich people were attacked, and this time, it was not the ordinary gang members, but their core members. Both of them were injured, but they were not taken away. However, several bodyguards were killed, and now some rich people seem to know about the existence of the spiritual world. They're asking if they can hire people from the spiritual world as bodyguards. Chen Zhao raised an eyebrow. What do you think? This is beneficial to the North American supernatural world, but it's meaningless to us. We have too few people, and we're generally stronger than ordinary spiritualists. If our asking price is low, it's meaningless to us. If we ask for a high price, not many people can afford it. What's the level of the price that the rich people are offering? Right now, the prices are all private. The spiritualists they find are also different, so it's hard to have a standard. But the average annual salary is less than $300,000. Chen Zhao thought about it. This price was indeed very attractive to spiritualists who did not have a high income. But to the supernatural organization, it was not attractive at all. The Adus who guarded the gate here all had an annual income of $500,000. After all, in everyone's eyes, Adus was a high-risk job. The other members' annual income was between $800,000 and $1 million. If they could not pay at least twice that, they would not be attractive to the supernatural organization. But spending $2 or $3 million a year was also unbearable for most rich people. Chen Zhao's annual income was in the billions, but he was a special case. Rich people with an annual income of more than $50 million were already in the minority. Some people might have billions, but they might not even have more than $10 million in spare cash. It was clearly impossible for them to spend a few million to find someone to protect them. Of course, the top rich could still afford a few million for security. But the top rich might have already contacted them, so they would not have a chance. However, there's a rich man who contacted us and wants us to be his security consultant. Oh, who is it? You know him. Norma's uncle, Louis Clallam. Oh, him. Louis Clallam was an awakened himself, so he could be considered a member of the supernatural world. In fact, Louis Clallam and Chen Zhao had many similarities. Moreover, Norma was a pure, awakened, and one of the pillars of the supernatural organization. So it wasn't strange that Louis Clallam had contacted the supernatural organization. When Norma joined the supernatural organization, Louis Clallam had donated tens of millions of dollars to them. How does Clallam plan to cooperate with us? We'll provide him with some advice on security and help with magic. He'll give us $20 million a year. Sure, that's reasonable. Chen Zhao nodded. Actually, this kind of cooperation would officially establish their relationship and deepen their relationship. After all, even if Chen Zhao did not agree to this kind of cooperation, would Norma just stand by if Louis was in trouble? Of course, if Louis really was in trouble, the supernatural organization would also provide more protective services, such as Chen Zhao's personal help. Let's hurry and find those crazy people from the English gang. They're very cautious now. It'll be hard. West was helpless too. Without a source of information, it was useless no matter how anxious they were. Chen Zhao was considering if he should find some clues from other sources. After all, he had his own connections. Just then, Chen Zhao's phone rang. It was Lila Gavich. Elf messenger, what can I do for you? Although Lila Gavich was an elf, he was an elf messenger. Every time he saw Lila Gavich, Chen Zhao could not help but curse in his heart. He had destroyed Chen Zhao's good impression of elves. Chapter 2786. Beautiful, fair-skinned, long-legged, natural, gentle, and kind. These were almost all of Chen Zhao's hopes for elves. But they were also the opposite of Lila Gavich. A 250-pound fatty clearly had nothing to do with fair-skinned and long-legged. As a chemical giant, he naturally had nothing to do with being fair-skinned and long-legged. Gentle and kind? Huh. Chun, do you have time to come to my house? Sure. Now? Of course. Okay, I'll go now. Oh, I moved. Come to New Moon Beach. New Moon Beach? How come I've never heard of it? I bought it recently. In fact, Lila Gavich had bought the beach because he'd been to Chen Zhao's moon villa a few times. Then he cleaned and improved the beach, even renaming it. Okay, I'll be there soon. Some people had once said that if Los Angeles opened up its entire coastline for sale, its finances alone could buy the entire United States. Los Angeles had the best, and longest coastline in North America. Moreover, there were many high-quality beaches. However, many of the beaches were parks or weren't allowed to be developed because they were coral reefs. Therefore, most of the beaches were still in their original state. Of course, this was also the value of the developed coastlines. Because of the scarcity and the protection of the surrounding environment, the developed coastlines were able to retain their value. Therefore, every beach that was sold or developed was a rare resource. It was an astronomical price. Apart from a few beaches, the rest were all worth hundreds of millions of dollars. As for the Bright Moon Villa, in the end, the price of the Bright Moon Beach didn't go up because the sharks had taken over the area. Moreover, Chen Zhao and Amira had been close, so Amira was giving it away for free. Otherwise, a few $1 million wouldn't be able to buy Moon Beach. Lila Gavich's New Moon Beach wasn't worse than Moon Beach. In fact, many things were even better. Of course, Moon Beach had been improved by Chen Zhao's spiritual qi. One wouldn't be able to find a better coastline in America or even the world, let alone New Moon Beach. Moon Beach was a blessed land that could rival top sections. When Chen Zhao arrived at the villa before New Moon Beach, he realized that apart from Lila Gavich, there were only two maids. Gavich, you only have 2 maids in such a big mansion. Is that convenient? How about you sell me a few underlings? Forget it. Selling inferior demons makes me feel like I'm selling human beings. Actually, after interacting with underlings for a long time, Chun Zhao would develop feelings for them. Underlings were born servants, but they still had their own thoughts. Moreover, they are naturally lively, optimistic, and loyal. They were of great help to Chun Zhao and Fei Lai in their daily lives. Chun Zhao had a lot of underlings, but he didn't need them. However, Chun Zhao didn't want to sell them. Of course, Chun Zhao wouldn't let the underlings breed endlessly. Therefore, Chun Zhao would give them a maximum number of reproduction. Once they reached this number, they would stop reproducing. This was not difficult. Their total number divided by the upper limit of their lifespan was the number they could reproduce each year. If humans were born rebellious, then they were born to be subservient. Lila Gage knew the origins of the lesser demons, a race of demons from hell. Lila Gavich did not find this strange. After all, Chun Zhao could travel between the human world and the human world freely. Therefore, it was not strange to bring a few demons from hell back to the human world. After what had happened last time, Lila Gage only respected Chun Zhao. Although Chun Zhao rejected his request, he did not take it to heart. Lila Gage called the maids over to prepare some wine and food for them. Chun Zhao glanced at the 2 maids with twisted faces. They did not belong to a normal person's sense of beauty. In fact, their appearance had surpassed most creatures' sense of beauty. Simply put, they were ugly and extraordinarily ugly. Chun Zhao did not understand why Lila Gage would find 2 strange-looking women to be his maids. This had nothing to do with discrimination. It was purely because no normal person would make such a choice. It was not like he did not have the financial means. He could easily find 2 or even more beautiful women to be his maids. At least, Chun Zhao would not find someone like them. They're half-elves. Chun Zhao's expression seemed to be saying, "Are you kidding me? I'm not joking. They're half-elves and have dark elf blood. Because their blood can't perfectly merge with humans, they look like this." Lila Gavich looked at him seriously. Because of their looks, they were abandoned in the orphanage, so they have low self-esteem. They're also bullied by their own kind. I invited you here for them too. Lila Gavich looked at Chun Zhao seriously. "I'm not a plastic surgeon," Chun Zhao said helplessly. "I think even a plastic surgeon can't save them." "Of course I know, but it's not like there's no way." "Are you talking about magic?" "Yes, but it's not human magic." "Hell magic?" Chun Zhao asked. "The 1,000 Faces spell. As long as you master this spell, you can change your appearance at will," Lila Gage said. "Apparently, even demons have not heard of this spell. At least, most demons don't know about it, but I still have some hope." Lila Gage looked at Chun Zhao seriously. "I can ask my friends in hell for you, but I can't guarantee that they have it. Also, if they need to pay any price, you'll have to pay for it." "Of course I understand, but I hope it won't be too high." "Don't worry. If it's too high, I'll reject them for you." When the 2 maids came out, they were very excited. They must have inherited elves' extraordinary hearing and already heard Chun Zhao and Lila Gage's conversation. To them, appearance was probably their lifelong pursuit. Just then, one of the maids said, "Mr. Lila, Mr. Chun, there are 2 people outside." Chun Zhao sensed and could already tell that one of them was Tim. As for the other person, he had powerful magic waves around him. His aura rippled, as if he was ready to fight at any time. He clearly didn't come with good intentions. "I'll go take care of them," Chun Zhao said, standing up. "No, leave it to Inyaxalai and Bellori," Lila Gage said. "Huh? Them?" Chun Zhao looked at the 2 maids. "Sir, should we just kill them?" Inyaxalai asked. Chun Zhao thought for a moment. "If possible, just subdue them for now." Chapter 2787. Bodhi, that Asian should have entered the manor just now, right? Even if this manor doesn't belong to that Asian, he must be rich, Bodhi said, his eyes shining. Tim was still worried. After all, he'd seen Chun Zhao fight. What left the deepest impression on him wasn't Chun Zhao's strange and unpredictable magic. Instead, it was Chun Zhao's coldness that could easily turn people into dust. This was what left the deepest impression on him. Such a big manner. But there are only 4 people, Bodhi said, touching his chin. How do you know there are only 4 people inside? Tim asked, confused. Bodhi chuckled. As long as there are people breathing and air spreading, they can't escape my senses. Bodhi glanced at Tim. Tim suddenly felt suffocated. The air around him seemed to have thinned. That Asian you mentioned has the power to control fire, and I'm his nemesis. Before me, he can't even raise a single flame. Bodhi's basic ability was to control air. It was a very basic ability. However, the more basic an ability was, the more possibilities it had. Bodhi had just obtained this ability not long ago, but he'd already mastered some techniques. The deeper he explored, the more he felt that this ability was powerful and unfathomable. Moreover, this kind of ability could be continuously strengthened through exploration. At first, Bodhi could only sense the air flow within a few meters around him. But now, half a year later, he could already sense within 100 meters. This ability also made him the radar of the English gang. In the attack 2 days ago, he'd relied on his foresight to gain the upper hand and leave easily. At this moment, 2 women came out, 2 extremely ugly women. Inyaxalai and Bellery came to the door. They blocked Bodhi and Tim's footsteps. Let's go in, Bodhi said, unconcerned. But that Bodhi didn't care. I'm not interested in ugly women. Inyaxalai and Bellery were ugly, unbelievably ugly. But this was also their taboo. The more they lacked something, the more they cared about it. Bodhi had said such things to them, right in front of them. Clearly, he'd crossed their bottom line. You're courting death. In an instant, Enyasili's eyes turned golden. She spread her arms wide as if she was drawing an invisible bow. Gradually, the dark golden bow's horn and the golden bowstring appeared in the form of energy particles. The last one was a pure white arrow. Bodhi snorted, raised his palm, and pressed it down again. In an instant, Enyasili felt like she was suffocating. However, her magic did not stop. Bodhi was a little surprised, but not too surprised. He had fought against the psionic team before. A simple suffocation would not cause too much trouble to the spiritualists. The ugly woman in front of him was obviously more troublesome than most of the enemies that night. Since he was unable to pose a threat to his enemies, it was naturally difficult for him to pose a threat to this woman. So Bodhi soon decided to change his move. Against the wind, controlling the air meant controlling the air pressure. The so-called air pressure was the difference in air density. Mastering air pressure meant mastering the flow of air, which was wind. Bodhi could now create a small storm in a small area. But at that moment, Billy made her move. She also raised her right palm, and an invisible barrier appeared in front of them. For ordinary people, Bodhi's attack could not be seen or touched. But for the elves, none of this was a secret. Their communication with nature allowed them to know everything around them like the back of their hands. The wind stopped in front of them. This kind of natural attack was neutralized by the barrier of nature. Bodhi frowned slightly. The 2 ugly women in front of him seemed quite troublesome. But it was not to the extent that Bodhi was helpless. Air was everywhere, and his power was everywhere. Suddenly, Bodhi compressed the air, forming a high-pressure air mass, and smashed it heavily at Enyasili and Biloli. What a crude way to use it. Biloli was even more disapproving. Elves were a race that had mastered magic earlier than humans. Their application of magic was also more delicate than humans. The same spell could be used to great effect in their hands. If Inyaxalai and Bellery's appearance was the sum of elves and humans, then their magic talent was the sum of elves and humans. Unfortunately, they also had the best teacher among the elves, who was also their adoptive father, Lila Gavich. In the past, Lila Gavich had been the strongest among the elves. But now he was the strongest, the elven emissary that hadn't appeared in centuries. Sound of silence, Biloli said indifferently. She didn't seem to move at all. The immense pressure that was pressing down on them instantly turned into a soundless breeze. Bodhi had thought that he was the nemesis of fire magic, because air was the foundation of flame combustion. Without air, fire could not be generated. But the elves were his nemesis. Because of the elves' nature magic, the essence of his seemingly invisible magic was not mysterious. The greatest characteristic of nature magic was that it came from heaven and earth, from all things, and from nature. It was more natural and comprehensive. It wasn't control, but resonance. Resonance. This was an extremely profound magic theory in the spiritual world. Most spiritualists could master a dozen spells, but no matter how skilled they were, they couldn't achieve resonance. For human spiritualists to understand resonance, they needed the right time, place, and people. Those with mediocre talent might not be able to understand resonance their entire lives. But most elves were born with the talent of resonance. And Inyasili and Biloli were even more talented than that. It wasn't that they weren't strong enough, and it wasn't that they couldn't release more powerful and destructive spells. They just released the spells that suited them best. In front of them, Bodhi didn't have any secrets. His abilities, his moves, it was as if he was running naked in front of the two of them. His skills were average, his abilities were average, and his control was average. In short, he was very stable and comprehensive. Just then, Inyasili's arrow of nature was completed. Inyasili loosened the golden bowstring. Sniff, a simple and unadorned arrow. Bodhi's air wall was shattered. Body was sent flying and smashed into the trunk of a big tree behind him. He didn't die, but he was seriously injured. Inyasili, your magic is not detailed enough, Biloli said calmly. As the elder sister, she had the right to say that. Chapter 2788. Inyasili didn't retort. After all, Bilori's magic talent and power were indeed above hers. Apart from her adoptive father and teacher, Lila Gage, Inyasili could only listen to Bilori. Inyasili could only listen to Bilori's words. Bodhi spat out blood in pain. His mind was still blank. Tim didn't dare to move at all. He already regretted listening to Bodhi's arrogant words. He naively thought that he could break free from Chun Zhao's control. In the end, he was defeated by these two ugly women before he could even see Bodhi. Inyasili walked up and picked Bodhi up. Bilori came to Tim's side and was about to attack. I'll go myself, Tim said hurriedly. The two were brought before Chun Zhao and Lila Gage. Chun Zhao glanced at Bodhi and then at Tim. Right now, Tim was trembling all over. How could he believe Bodhi's words? Bodhi was captured, but the ferocity in his eyes didn't decrease. He stared at Chun Zhao closely. I want to duel you. Bodhi growled at Chun Zhao. Lila Gage couldn't help but look at Chun Zhao and then at Bodhi. He couldn't even beat his adopted daughter. Duel Chun Zhao. Do you want to eat shit? Duel. Chun Zhao asked carelessly. What do I get? I have everything you want to know. If I lose, what do I lose? Your power. Okay, come. Chun Zhao hooked his finger. But Chun Zhao still sat on the chair. Bodhi lowered his head slightly. His expression was cold. Suffocation. Chun Zhao realized that the air around him had been sucked dry. In fact, when Bodhi was fighting Inyasili and Bilori, he'd already realized that Bodhi had the power to control air. However, Chun Zhao also realized that his ability didn't come from his bloodline or magic. It was more like an instinct, like eating and sleeping. This ability wasn't rare, but the way to use it was rare. It could even be said to be unique. Bodhi looked at Chun Zhao in shock. What was going on? Why didn't it work? You can control air. Will you die from lack of oxygen? What? You have 10 seconds to prepare enough air. After all, you're about to go to a low oxygen area. Bodhi was still confused. He didn't understand what Chun Zhao meant. But soon he understood, because his body suddenly rose into the air. 100 meters, 1,000 meters, 10,000 meters, 20,000 meters, 30,000 meters. Now, he finally understood Chun Zhao's words. The air was getting thinner, and his strength was getting weaker and weaker. Ah! Tim could only hear his brother's screams rising into the air. Everyone remained silent. About a few minutes later, everyone raised their heads again. That was because everyone heard another blood-curdling scream. It came from high up in the sky. At the same time, Bodhi's figure was gradually growing from a small black dot. However, he did not land in the courtyard, but in the sea. The moment it fell into the sea, it set off huge waves. Then, he was pushed out by the seawater and thrown into the courtyard. He lay on the ground, dripping wet. Bodhi's whole body was curled up, and he kept shaking. High up in the sky, the suffocation, the cold, and the high temperature almost reached the extreme pain that a human could endure. Tim also turned pale with fright. Earlier, when Bodhi challenged Chun Zhao confidently, Chun Zhao was stunned. He had hoped that Bodhi had some trump card that could turn the tables. In the end, he was disappointed. Completely disappointed. There was no need to explain the difference between them. They weren't even creatures of the same dimension. The difference between the two couldn't be calculated with logic. Even Lila Gavik could not help but exclaim. Chun Zhao's strength was completely unreasonable. Nevertheless, Lila Gavik still admired Bodhi. At least he dared to challenge Chun Zhao. Of course, it was not because of his fearlessness. It was because of his ignorance. He had beaten the elemental lord, demigod Amandadar, to death. A terrifying existence that fought against a million demons alone. Just how big of a heart did he have to be to challenge him to a duel? Of course, the result was within Lila Gavik's expectations. However, the process was somewhat unexpected. The poor guy had almost been thrown out of the atmosphere. Bodhi lay on the ground, dying. If you want to keep lying on the ground and pretend to be dead, I can fulfill your wish. As expected, Bodhi propped himself up with difficulty. There was deep fear in his eyes when he looked at Chun Zhao. As the person involved, he knew very well what had just happened. He might be the first person in human history to fly so high without any equipment. Of course, the man before him might have also reached that height. Looks like you already know the difference between us. Do you want to continue the duel? Or admit defeat? I admit defeat. Then tell me everything you know. For example, how did you obtain this power and the purpose of your duel? Chun Zhao knew very well that when he agreed to the duel, a special power was exerted on him. It was like a contract, but different. This power restrained him. Chun Zhao was surprised and curious about this power. This wasn't a power system that he was familiar with. That was why Bodhi could survive. It wasn't because he was powerful, but because he was valuable. Bodhi was very unwilling. But there was no use in being unwilling. What do you want to know? I said everything. Let's start with the duel just now. Where did the contract come from? Bodhi was shocked. Chun Zhao was the first person to feel the uniqueness of the duel. Don't be too surprised. The man before you is the strongest human in the world. The Olympian gods, Bodhi answered. This duel was recognized and watched by the gods. The Olympian gods died long ago, Chun Zhao said, unconcerned. Don't talk to me about those mysterious things. Chun Zhao knew more about the Olympian gods than anyone else. That divine mountain had been a corner of Mount Olympus. It was clear that the entire mountain had probably been destroyed. Even if the Olympian gods hadn't died, they were probably hiding in some corner, struggling to survive. When Bodhi talked about the Olympian gods, Chun Zhao was more willing to believe that it was some evil god's blessing. Whether you believe it or not, I'm just telling you what I know. Bodhi also knew that it wasn't easy to be believed and accepted when the topic was about gods. But as the loser of the duel, he could only answer truthfully. Then don't tell me the source of your power is also from one of the Olympian gods. More accurately, it's Ares, the god of war. Chapter 2789. Milo Tanzik Williams calls himself the god of war, Ares's Earthwalker. The prerequisite for us to obtain this power is to cut off all ties. Your entire family? Chun Zhao sneered. He didn't believe that a good god could make such a rule. Most evil gods probably wouldn't make such a rule. Tim stared at Bodhi in shock. He was Bodhi's real brother. They'd been in an orphanage when they were young and then separated. But they'd kept in touch all these years. He knew how much Bodhi loved his wife. He'd been happy for Bodhi back then, but he didn't believe it. Bodhi would actually kill his own wife for some illusory power. Feeling Tim's gaze, Bodhi said indifferently, "Only brothers won't betray each other." His words obviously contained a lot of meaning. "Even without this rule, I won't let that bitch go. So before you do it, do you need a ceremony?" "Ceremony? No. But Mr. Milo gave me a red dagger." Bodhi's method was extreme. However, Chun Zhao thought about something else. If Bodhi was telling the truth, the rules set by Ares, the god of war, only required him to kill his loved ones. Wife, children, parents, so the rule didn't restrict blood relations. After all, the wife definitely wasn't related to him by blood. Secondly, it didn't matter if they had feelings. It seemed like it didn't matter if they were close relatives or not. So instead of saying it was a rule, it was more like a sacrifice. Where's the dagger? Is it still with you? It has been taken away by Mr. Moreau. After killing your wife, you obtained the power to control air? I returned the red dagger to Mr. Milo and had him drip a drop of my blood on the dagger. Then I obtained this power. Chen Zhao thought for a while. He was sure that this was a magic ceremony, but it didn't seem very complicated. As for whether it was Ares or not, that still needed to be proven. After all, humans borrowed the name of gods, or gods borrowed the name of other gods. This was all normal. Any outcome was possible. However, to be able to bestow such extraordinary power to others, it was definitely not an ordinary force. Even a Taoist sacred ground like Mount Longhu might not be able to directly allow an ordinary person to obtain extraordinary power. Of course, this wasn't without a price. After all, under normal circumstances, no one would accept the condition of killing their own kin. Perhaps only someone like Bodhi, who would kill his wife for betraying him, or someone like Hallie's, who had a deep grudge against her mother and siblings. Of course, there were definitely people who were selfish to the extreme. However, such people were definitely in the minority. Where are the people of your England gang hiding? My men searched all over Los Angeles, but they couldn't find your people. Bodhi took a deep breath and said, obviously, we didn't really turn Los Angeles upside down. Please don't joke with me. I'm not joking. Bodhi said helplessly, our people are hiding underground. I don't know how Mr. Moreau did it that day, but he sent all of us deep underground. There's a huge palace there. I don't know the exact location, but hot lava flows there. There's no entrance or exit. Apart from Mr. Moreau, no one can bring anyone in. Then how did you get out? Mr. Moreau sent me out. He told me to buy some food and daily necessities. How do we go back? Bodhi shook his head. He said that he'll teleport me back in 12 hours. I don't know how exactly he did it. Chen Zhao looked at Lila Gavik. Gavik shook his head. I can't do anything about this kind of time-fixed teleportation spell. Plus, I don't even know if the underground palace is under Los Angeles. Is there a way to stop him from being teleported away? Chen Zhao asked, pointing at Bodhi. That's possible. Chen Zhao had already considered it. If he couldn't stop Bodhi from being teleported away, he would kill him directly. After all, he was his captive now. An escaped captive wasn't a good captive. Moreover, if Bodhi was hiding deep underground, even the most advanced tracking devices probably wouldn't be able to locate him. After all, no signal could be transmitted under the thick rock stratum. Even magic probably wouldn't be able to do that. This was why many powerful creatures had long lifespans. In order to avoid being tracked by their enemies, they would bury themselves in the ground for decades, centuries, or even millennia. Then, when their enemies were all dead, they would wake up on their own. This move was a bit shameless, but it was very effective. Chen Zhao couldn't do anything about it either. Then Lila Gavik cast a confinement spell on Bodhi. Apart from sealing his teleportation, it also sealed his power. Chen Zhao also informed Wes to come and take Bodhi away. Before he left, Lila Gavik emphasized the matter of the Thousand Faces spell again. After getting into the car, Chen Zhao called the handsome guy. But as soon as he picked up, an extremely horrifying face appeared on the screen. Chen Zhao had seen a lot of things, after all. However, the demon's face still gave Chen Zhao a fright. Handsome guy, it's me. What, are you scared by my face? A little. The scene was too horrifying. Is this your real face? This is my extreme evil form, the handsome guy said. Why are you showing this form? Are you trying to scare me? I just killed a secondary demon king. Secondary demon kings are all your descendants, right? Lucifer was the only demon king without descendants. But the birth of every secondary demon king required Lucifer's blood. Therefore, every secondary demon king was equivalent to Lucifer's descendant. They're my descendants, but so what? I can create as many as I want. It's like the sperm you shot out. Do you care about their lives? Chen Zhao suddenly didn't know how to retort. Fine, those secondary demon kings were indeed just sperm to the handsome guy. Do you need to become like this to kill a secondary demon king? No, it's just to show my cruel side. If it's the face I show to you, it's hard to associate me with cruelty. The handsome guy recovered his original face, or rather, one of his faces. It was a normal face that Chen Zhao often saw. Why did you call me? Do you know the thousand-face spell? No, but Belial does. You could go find her. The thousand-face spell has a limited bloodline. There's actually a spell that you don't know. It's not that I can't learn it, but the 7 of us don't touch the spells that each other created. The thousand-face spell was created by Belial, so the other 6 don't know it. But other than the most traditional thousand-face spell, there should be many lesser demons who modified it after touching it. Chapter 2790. What's the difference between the Thousand Faces spell modified by other demons and the one she created? Belia's Thousand Faces technique doesn't just allow her to transform into a myriad of forms. Each of her faces has a unique power. For example, if she can transform into a dragon, she will have the power of a dragon. If she transforms into a phoenix, she will have an undying and indestructible body. Moreover, the identity she transforms into will even exceed the limit of the original strength of this identity. Let's take the ancestral dragon as an example. If Belia transforms into a dragon, she will be even more powerful than the ancestral dragon. Moreover, she can change her face at will without any restrictions. The handsome guy said, "Of course, this is because she's Belial, so she can overcome all kinds of restrictions. The versions that other demons cultivate naturally can't be as close to omnipotent as Belial." To put it bluntly, the Thousand Faces technique that other demons have modified is a reduced version of the Thousand Faces technique, and some of the Thousand Faces technique have already changed beyond recognition. Of course, Chen Zhao knew that these demon kings were indescribably powerful, even if the handsome guy's description was already terrifying enough. This was just the tip of the iceberg. When you think that the strength of the great demon king that you are serving is everything, then it would be the moment of your death. Apart from Belia, no one else knows the complete Thousand Faces spell. Suddenly, a terrifying wave of energy exploded from the phone screen without any warning. Even a handsome young man had disappeared from the other end of the phone screen. The next moment, a graceful figure appeared on the other side of the screen. "I heard you were looking for me." Belia was here. More accurately, the handsome guy's phone had fallen into Belia's hands. Their surroundings were Belia's palace. She still had that graceful figure and that unparalleled beauty. "No, I wasn't looking for you." Chen Zhao instinctively denied it. "Is that so?" Belial's voice rose slightly. "I heard you call my name." In their conversation, Chen Zhao had only mentioned Belia's name once, but the handsome guy had mentioned it countless times. But nothing happened when the handsome guy called Belia's name. Why did she sense it instantly when he called Belia's name? Moreover, he was separated from her by a world. "Okay, I was looking for you." "What? If I'm on the Thousand Faces technique, what price do you want me to pay?" The handsome young man had already said that this was definitely Belial's trump card. Under normal circumstances, she would never share it with others. However, Chen Zhao still had a sliver of hope. "I'll tell you tonight." Belial smiled charmingly. Chen Zhao shuddered. Then, they tacitly didn't continue this topic. There was a type of woman who couldn't be fed enough. Chen Zhao thought that he had the best stamina among humans. Unfortunately, facing this demon king, Chen Zhao really felt like he was powerless even though he wanted to, although it was very embarrassing for a man. However, this woman was called Belia. Belial tilted his head slightly and looked outside the palace. "Okay, the call ends here. That guy's here to ask for his stuff." As he spoke, the phone returned to the handsome boy's hand. Even the background had changed. "Belial agreed to your request. You can say that you've agreed." Chen Zhao's expression was bitter. He didn't know if the medicine from Soul Supply would work on him. The suppression brought about by the difference in levels was often in all aspects. After thinking for a while, Chen Zhao still gave up on this idea. The strongest man in the world would never buy medicine. Just then, Wes called. Hey, President, when are you coming to the headquarters? What? Did Body provide any more information? It's not about that guy. The elder from the crypt demons contacted me. He said that some large spider demons have appeared around their territory. They can't handle them, so they want us to help. Chen Zhao thought for a moment and asked, Do you need me to help? I hope that Gaia will lead the team this time. Zhao and Ash, Norma, Hallies, and Unelite will be in charge, Wes said. With their current strength, it shouldn't be a problem to deal with the Arachne. The large Arachne are more difficult to deal with. You guys better be careful. Also, the large Arachne have some kind of golden substance on their bodies. You guys better bring Ruan Faxspin along and let him refine that golden substance. There was a period of time when I relied on absorbing golden substance to break through the bottleneck. Okay, got it. Chen Zhao hung up and saw a police car parked by the road. The person in the car was someone he knew, Sharon. Chen Zhao parked the car behind the police car. Hi, Sharon. Chun. Sharon glanced at Chen Zhao. Long time no see. How'd you been? Not bad. I went back to China during Chinese New Year. How are you? You don't seem to be in the transportation department anymore. I'm not, but I still have the right to enforce the law. With that, Sharon looked back at Chen Zhao's car. My car is parked in the parking space. Sorry to disappoint you. Just then, a young police officer walked out of a coffee shop with 2 cups of coffee in his hands. Seeing Chen Zhao standing before the police car, his expression darkened. When he looked at Chen Zhao, his eyes were filled with hostility. Sharon, here's your coffee. Do you know him? My friend, Sharon said as she took the coffee. Chen Zhao glanced at the young officer and chuckled. You're starting to lead newbies now? I can't help it. LAPD is short on manpower recently. Wade Delhi just graduated, but he needs to familiarize himself with his job. Sharon, I think I'm a qualified officer now. I'm not a newbie. I'm your partner, Wade Delhi said, dissatisfied. Is that what you think? Of course. Good. If you can beat this guy in combat, I'll admit that you're a qualified officer and a qualified partner. Him? Wade Delhi looked at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao was around 8 meters tall, much smaller than him. Wade Delhi then looked at Sharon. Are you sure you want me to fight with your friend? Wade Delhi seemed hesitant, but his tone was actually provocative. Of course I'm sure. Sharon smiled and looked at Chen Zhao. You don't mind helping your friend, right? Of course not, Chen Zhao said, chuckling. It's everyone's dream to beat up a police officer legally. Wade Delhi snorted. Sir, you better take off your expensive brand first. I can't afford it. Also, let me say that I'm the new champion of the police school. Chen Zhao struck a pose. Tai Chi, Chun family. Chapter 2791. Fuck. Wade Delhi immediately followed up with a left hook. Chen Zhao didn't know Tai Chi, not at all. But for a high-level existence, he could still fool others. Even if he didn't know, he could still fool others. Plus, his opponent knew even less. Chen Zhao first used a formless Tai Chi move to dissolve Wade Delhi's attack. Wade Delhi was dumbfounded. In fact, Chen Zhao's move relied on the guidance of the small world. But to Wade Delhi, Chen Zhao's move was very mysterious. Many foreigners were obsessed with Chinese Kung Fu. Wade Delhi wasn't that kind of fan, but that didn't stop him from being poisoned. Just now, Chen Zhao had only gently touched his fist and pulled it back slightly, but Chen Zhao had managed to deviate his charge attack. Wade Delhi couldn't help but get serious. At first, he was just joking. After all, Chen Zhao wasn't a criminal. His hostility toward Chen Zhao was mostly because of Sharon and Chen Zhao's intimacy and familiarity. It made him jealous. Plus, he wanted to act cool in front of Sharon, so he didn't plan on doing anything to Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao hooked his hand. Wade Delhi rushed to Chen Zhao in a few steps. It was the same punch again, but this time it was a right hook. This time, Chen Zhao seemed to be welcoming it. Then, he sent a palm toward Wade Delhi's chest, combining strength and gentleness. At first, Wade Delhi was amused. What could such a light palm do to him? But the next moment, he lost control and flew several meters away. His entire back smashed into the police car door. Bang! Even Shalon was frightened by the loud noise. She knew that Chun Zhao was very good at fighting, very, very good. But she didn't think that Chun Zhao would hit Wei Deli too hard. But her car door was deformed. That wasn't hard. Wei Deli was dumbfounded. He looked back at the car door and then touched his hands and feet. They didn't hurt at all. Wei Deli felt like he discovered a new world. Wei Deli immediately used his ultimate move. This move was limited by his bloodline. It was his first time using it, but Wei Deli learned it himself. He used a max-level move right away. Thud. Master, please accept me as your disciple. When a foreigner met a master's unique move, he knelt, kowtowed, and made a strange Shifu sound. Chun Zhao was also shocked. What kind of show was this? Chun Zhao had come up with this idea on the spur of the moment. He wanted to play the role of a martial arts master. Why did they collide with each other before the fight was even over? Sharon looked at him. She was not interested in whether he knew martial arts or not. Anyway, even if Chun Zhao didn't use that China Kung Fu, he could still beat Wei Deli up. Chun, you pay for the repair fee. Send me the bill. Chun Zhao shrugged. Also, if you don't pull him off my leg, I'll really beat him up. Master, please accept me as your disciple. Chun Zhao shook off Wei Deli, but Wei Deli pounced at him again. Wei Deli, you better behave yourself. Sharon went up and pulled Wei Deli away. Master, Master, Chun Zhao rolled his eyes and left. Wei Deli watched Chun Zhao's sports car leave. His soul almost flew away with it. Sarah, where does Master Chun live? Just give up. He will never accept you as his disciple. Why? I'm very sincere. Do you think a billionaire will waste time teaching a stranger martial arts? His last disciple is the former boxing champion, Tiger. Tiger is his disciple. No wonder he's so strong, Wei Deli said enviously. But he was still defeated by Syndicate in the end. Syndicate is also his disciple, Sharon said calmly. Then I'll definitely be his third disciple. Sharon chuckled. She did not plan on continuing to hurt Wei Deli's confidence. Chun Zhao had just returned home and was taking a bath. Suddenly, he felt dizzy. Cursing, he dove into the water before he could get out of the bathtub. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself in Belial's palace. Belia was still lying on her throne in a graceful and luxurious manner. Belial, how can you affect me in the human world? In Chun Zhao's memory, the handsome guy had said that even he could not pass through the world wall and affect the human world. But Belial could actually make him fall asleep in the human world. Belial looked at Chun Zhao with a smile. Guess. If you get it right, you'll be rewarded. If you get it wrong, you'll be punished. Because you're very powerful. Wrong. Smiling, Belial licked her red lips. Chun Zhao's expression stiffened. You should know what kind of punishment you'll receive, right? You don't need to change your size this time. I'll shrink. To be honest, Belial was a perfect lover. She could satisfy all the fantasies men had about women. Moreover, she could change her aura, appearance, and even body according to her needs. But she was only close. She was not truly perfect. Perhaps Chun Zhao himself was not perfect enough. That was why he felt that Belial was not perfect enough. Belial had clearly learned some skills from her maid. Then she practiced it on Chun Zhao. After a hearty battle, there was a moment of warmth. This is what I promised you. Belial stuffed a gem into Chun Zhao's hand. This is 1,000 faces. I'm not learning this myself. I'm giving it to a friend. Is that okay? Since I'm giving it to you, you can give it to whoever you want, Belial said nonchalantly. I heard from the handsome guy that this is your ultimate move. Are you sure it's okay? Belial suddenly laughed. The guy didn't say that. He won't say that. Plus, you seem to have misunderstood. This is just a spell I developed. It's a relatively complete spell, but it has nothing to do with my ultimate move. There are many demons who know the complete 1,000 Faces spell, but not a single one can master it. Talent or bloodline? Chun Zhao asked. Because I don't want them to learn it. What kind of logic is that? You gave them the complete 1,000 Faces spell, but you don't want them to learn it? Also, since they have the spell, can you stop them from learning it just because you don't want to? Of course. Fine. For existences like them, many things that even Chun Zhao found unbelievable were as easy as lifting a finger to them. So you're saying that even if I give them the spell, they might not be able to learn it? I'll allow them to learn it. As for whether they can learn it or not, their talent is still the biggest test. Chapter 2792. When Chun Zhao woke up again, he realized that he was still in the water, face down. Fei Lai had come back some time ago. She was removing her makeup in the bathroom. Glancing at Chun Zhao, who had woken up, Fei Lai was not curious about his strange behavior at all. "Darling, were you asleep just now?" Chun Zhao wiped the water off his face. "Yes. You put on makeup at work?" Chun Zhao asked, confused. "No. Angel Beach was temporarily closed in the afternoon. I went shopping with a few colleagues," Fei Lai said as she removed her makeup. "Oh, hey, seems a bit messy recently." "Yeah." Chun Zhao touched his head. "It's indeed a bit messy." Even Fei Lai could feel it. This meant that it was really messy, to the extent that even ordinary people could feel it. At the dining table, the children were still as quiet as they should be and frolicking about. The pets in the house went in and out too. Every now and then, a pet would come to the table to ask for food. Among them, Simba, Nana, Briar, and Bramble were the most frequent. Because of their young age, everyone spoiled them. So, they were the most unscrupulous. They were already 2 years old. Briar and Bramble grew the fastest, and they were a size bigger than Simba and Nana. The food at home was good too. Although they were still young, they were already quite big. When they stood up, they were more than 1 meter tall and weighed close to 30 kilograms. However, compared to their mother, Princess, they were still insignificant. Simba and Nana's mounts were African lions. Their growth cycle was actually shorter than brown bears, but Briar and Bramble's genes came from Princess, so Simba and Nana were still much smaller than Briar and Bramble. Nevertheless, Simba and Nana, Briar, and Bramble had all entered a rapid growth stage. Now, they would gain several kilograms almost every month. Speaking of freaks, little Jerlin was undoubtedly the #1 freak in the family. Her prestige in the pet circle could be said to be powerful. Every day, she would patrol the territory with Briar, Bramble, Simba, and Nana. Occasionally, she would also patrol with her little fangirl, little Larissa. Little Larissa was almost 1 year old. She was completely weaned off milk. She was also little Jerlin's #1 fan. Every day, she looked forward to little Jerlin taking her out. They were not old enough to think. Right now, they were still in the carefree stage. Chun Zhao had been considering whether he should start exposing Jerlin to magic. Little Jerlin was destined to be exposed to magic. After all, she had unparalleled talent. There was also the identity of the Witch of Nirvana, which was extremely rare since ancient times. She was already inextricably linked to the spirit world. She would also have to face some problems in the future. Chun Zhao didn't have any strange ideas. For example, magic was the source of misfortune and disaster. Or perhaps a childhood that was exposed to magic was a miserable childhood. In the spirit world, or at the edge of the spirit world, they would blame their miserable childhood on magic. Of course, Chun Zhao wouldn't let this happen to his child. Don't tell me that strangers want to harm them. Even getting close to it was impossible. The reason why Chun Zhao was considering whether to give little Jerlin the silent spell was that he had been thinking about it for a long time. It was mainly because Jerlin was too young. She might not be able to fully control Nirvana. Moreover, Nirvana magic itself was a very dangerous magic. At least, that was what a few knowledgeable people said. Chun Zhao didn't understand it himself. He'd read books on Nirvana magic. He could understand it, but he couldn't practice it. People would always be afraid of things they didn't understand. Chun Zhao was no exception. This was why he had been hesitant and didn't let Jerlin learn Nirvana magic. As for little Larissa, her talent wasn't below Jerlin's. After all, she'd awakened on the 3rd night the day she was born. This kind of talent could be said to be unparalleled in history. Fortunately, little Larissa didn't have any special attributes. Compared to Jerlin, little Larissa's future magic path was clearly easier to guide. The next day, Chun Zhao went to New Moon Villa. "Mr. Chun, why are you here again?" Lila Gavich looked at Chun Zhao, confused. Chun Zhao took out the gem that contained the 1,000 Faces spell that he'd gotten from Belial. "I'm here to give you this." Lila Gavich accepted the gem. Looking at the dazzling 7-color gem, he said, "It's beautiful, but what's it for?" "It contains the 1,000 Faces spell. A friend from hell gave it to me," Chen Zhao said. "That fast?" Lila Gavich was shocked. He knew that Chen Zhao's connections reached all the way to hell, but he'd also asked around. The 1,000 Faces spell had an extraordinary origin. Even Chen Zhao might not be able to get it so easily. He didn't think that he'd underestimated Chen Zhao's influence in hell. It had only been one night, and Chen Zhao had already obtained the 1,000 Faces spell. "It's okay." Chen Zhao shrugged. "Did you pay any price?" Lila Gavich asked. Suddenly, Lila Gavich realized that Chen Zhao's expression was strange. He seemed to be in pain and hesitation. What did this mean? Did he pay a huge price? But why did he feel reluctant to leave? Lila Gavich didn't understand. "Forget it. It's just a small matter." In the end, Chen Zhao waved his hand. He couldn't tell Lila Gavich that he'd sacrificed his body for the 1,000 Faces spell. Anyway, he and Belil were already used to each other. There was nothing to announce, but Lila Gavich let his imagination run wild and filled in the blanks on his own. He felt that Chen Zhao must have paid a huge price, and he couldn't pay it back. So, he pretended to be relaxed. This made Lila Gavich feel bad. He didn't think that his request would put Chen Zhao in such a difficult position. "I don't know how to extract the 1,000 Faces spell from the gem," Chen Zhao said. "The person who gave it to me didn't say. Try it yourself. If you really can't extract it, I'll ask the person again." "Are there any restrictions to cultivating this spell?" "This spell has a very powerful origin. Apart from Inyaxalai and Bellori, I don't recommend anyone else to cultivate it. You probably won't believe me even if I tell you the specific reason. Only they're allowed to cultivate this spell." Lila Gavich didn't really understand, but since Chen Zhao said this, there had to be a reason. Lila didn't plan on forcefully taking the spell. After all, he prepared it for his adopted daughter. Moreover, he'd asked Chen Zhao for this spell. If he really needed some powerful spell, he could ask Chen Zhao for one. He didn't have to get the 1,000 Faces spell. Chapter 2793. On the way back, Chen Zhao saw a group of hoodlums enter a restaurant. Chen Zhao parked the car at the entrance and watched what was happening in the restaurant. The hoodlums had blatantly eaten and dashed away. They even beat up the staff. Before the police came, they swaggered away. Chen Zhao drove slowly behind the hoodlums. They entered a bar, Hellfire Bar. Chen Zhao stayed at the street corner and kept staring at the bar. After 10 minutes, Chen Zhao took out his phone. "West, send that Bodhi to me. I'm on Mingdi Street, opposite a bar called Hellfire." "President, what do you want this guy for?" "I have some ideas," Chen Zhao said. A while later, Zhao and Ash sent Bodhi over. Nal had come with Jolene and Nash. "Why is she here?" Chen Zhao looked at Nar. Chen Zhao had seen Nar twice. He only remembered that Nar was Zhao and Ash's sister. Apparently, they were related by blood, but they were quite far apart. "She's been playing at the headquarters these days. She heard that I have a mission, so she came to join in the fun," Zhao and Ash said. "President, do you want to do it? If it's just a normal person, I don't mind helping you." Nar shouldn't mind either. Why were Zhao and Ash and Nar so excited? Because Chen Zhao had the legal right to use violence. The Anti-Terrorism Security Department had already sent out a notice. No matter what, they had to restore order to LA. Since this mission had been sent to the supernatural organization, it meant that they had the right to use magic and supernatural powers on normal people. The English gang was too violent. It caused the security of LA to plummet. It also touched the government's bottom line. No matter which government it was, they didn't like a situation that they couldn't control. LA's security was clearly beyond the government's control now. In troubled times, severe punishment was necessary. This saying was also true in Los Angeles. That was why the supernatural organization was given this power. Of course, the decision was still in Chen Zhao's hands. "We're going to do it, but not me or you." Chen Zhao looked at the back seat of Zhao and Ash's car. Bodhi, who was sitting in Zhao and Ash's car, seemed to feel Chen Zhao's gaze. He lowered his head subconsciously, avoiding Chen Zhao's gaze. "Bring him here." Bodhi was very obedient as a lamb. If they didn't know this guy's identity, they probably wouldn't believe that he was a ruthless character who killed his wife to prove his Tao. Do you know this place? Chen Zhao pointed at Hellfire Bar. Yes, it's Big Golden Tooth's territory. However, Big Golden Tooth was killed and is now under the control of one of Mr. Moreau's trusted aides. Go in and kill him, Chen Zhao said. Bodhi widened his eyes and stared at Chen Zhao in shock. Chen Zhao glanced at Bodhi. What? Is there a problem? No, no problem at all. Bodhi knew why Chen Zhao asked him to do this, but he had no choice. Oh, remember to keep them alive. Chen Zhao patted Bodhi's shoulder. Bodhi went in dejectedly. Not long after, there was a commotion in the bar. First, a few dancers escaped from the bar. Then, a few punks with blood all over their faces escaped from the bar. It was morning, and there were definitely no ordinary customers in the bar. Then there was the sound of gunfire. About 20 minutes later, Yi Zichen sat down. Bodhi walked out of the bar, covered in blood. I've already completed the mission. Bodhi looked at Chen Zhao expressionlessly. Slower than I thought, Chen Zhao said indifferently. Don't drip blood on my car door. Bodhi took 2 steps back. President, you want him to be the traitor? At least make the English gang think that he's a traitor? Will it work? No one can tolerate traitors, Chen Zhao said. Also, it's time to fix L.'s law and order. If we don't do anything, it'll cause even more trouble. Let's go to the next place. Don't let that guy get in my car. I don't want my new car to be dirted. I'll call the bank and clear your car loan, Chen Zhao said. I'll be happy to help you, President. When did you learn to be as greedy as an elite? President, you don't know how much my daily expenses are. Makeup, clothes, house, car, and magic items all need money. I can understand Angelide's difficulties now. Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. No matter how hard Jolin Ash made it sound, her income was actually more than most people in the world. The most effective way to solve chaos was violence. Whether it was mediation, legal support, or any other methods, they were far less effective than violence. Looking back at human history, there were far more cases of ending wars with war than through negotiation. Jolin Ash hung up the phone. President, I don't want to listen to your long speech. I just want to know when it's NAR and my turn. They'd already gone to 4 places. Chen Zhao only had Bodhi fight each time. Jolin Ash had completely become a driver. NAR, who'd been a volunteer fighter, complained incessantly. She'd come to join in the fun, not to Torel. It's about time, Chen Zhao said. The next stop is the lumberyard. Really? Do we have a chance to fight? We've been to 4 places in a row, and Bodhi has killed quite a number of people. No matter what, the other side has already reacted. The logging site is remote. It's a good place for them to gather. If we're lucky, there should be 1 or 2 decent opponents. Chen Zhao glanced at Bodhi, who was sitting in his passenger seat. Bodhi had already gone to 4 places. Other than the 4 gang leaders that Chen Zhao had asked him to kill, he'd also killed close to 20 people. But he wasn't unscathed. He'd been shot in the thigh, hit with a stick, and kicked a few times. Right now, it was already impressive that he could keep 30 to 40% of his abilities. Bodhi was actually quite strong. What he meant by not bad was that taking on 4 gangsters alone was already his limit. With his strength, it was unrealistic for him to purge the entire underground world of Los Angeles in a day. But Chen Zhao didn't want to wait that long. He hoped to calm the entire underground world in the shortest time possible. Of course, he would use Chen Zhao's original plan. Kill until blood flowed like a river. Then he would use the gang's best method to solve problems. Sometimes, no matter how much he thought, it would be faster and more convenient to fight. Chapter 2794. Chen Zhao and Jolin Ash's car drove into the logging field. One had to admit that the scale of the welcome was unprecedentedly grand. It was so grand that Bodhi couldn't help but tremble. There were at least 100 gangsters in the field before them. Most of them had guns too. Gangsters. In this land, guns were always the mainstream. Those with knives, daggers, or clubs could only be considered hooligans. Nelson sat in Jolin Ash's car. She seemed to regret coming here too. This was because the formation was bigger than she'd imagined. She didn't think that she could deal with almost 200 gunmen. She'd probably be over in a single round of gunfire. On the other hand, Jalanash was extremely excited. The car stopped and Jalanash pushed open the door excitedly. This is the stage I've been waiting for. This is the stage that belongs to me. Opposite them, a man and a woman sat on the hood of the car, watching Jalanash's arrogant attitude and words. Is that woman our target? No, but since we're here, it should be related to Bodhi. Then Chun Zhao and Bodhi also got out of the car. The man and woman immediately jumped down from the car. Bodhi, you really betrayed Mr. Moreau. Bodhi wasn't going to explain. It didn't matter if he was sincere or not. It couldn't cover up what he'd done. Are they like you? Chun Zhao asked. They're core members too. Bodhi looked at the man and woman. The man is Palm Zizi. His ability is electricity, and he can create magnetism with it. It's best not to carry metal before him. The woman is Darlene Lopez. Her ability is fire. She and Palm Zizi are a couple now, so they basically work together. Palm Zizi looked at Bodhi and rubbed his hands. Electricity flowed between his fingers. Looks like you're not going to explain. There's nothing to explain, Bodhi said straightforwardly. Only the last person standing here has the right to listen to others' explanations. That's true. Palm Zizi raised his right arm. Crack, crack. All the gunmen raised their guns and pointed at Chun Zhao's group. The moment Palm Zizi lowered his arm, bullets rained down on them. Even Bodhi felt a suffocating pressure at this moment. Chun Zhao was strong, but could a human really stop a hail of bullets like this? However, when the bullets got within 10 meters of Chun Zhao, they began to slow down. It was like hitting an invisible sponge. According to the different trajectories, the depth of penetration of each bullet could be clearly seen. But overall, there wasn't much difference. Bullets hovered in the air. It would not be an exaggeration to say that the scene was breathtaking. Palm Zizi and Darlene Lopez couldn't help but look surprised. Is this Bodhi's air wall? No, it's not Bodhi's ability. It was the ability of the man beside Bodhi. Both of their pupils suddenly shrank. The next moment, Chun Zhao suddenly waved his hand. In an instant, all the bullets flew back. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound of something piercing through the air rose and fell for a few seconds. At the same time, it was accompanied by the screams of the gunmen beside Palm Zizi and Darlene Lopez. In the blink of an eye, the imposing formation had turned into a river of blood. Both of their skin tensed up in an instant. This person's power was so terrifying that it made their scalps go numb. More than 200 gunmen had been killed instantly. Anyone would feel their head explode in such a situation. Chun Zhao had a faint smile on his face. But in everyone's eyes, it was a demonic smile. Supernatural things are supernatural. Don't let ordinary people get involved in our fights. What do you think? The scene turned awkward. You killed all the ordinary people, and then you say don't let ordinary people get involved? We object vehemently. But what's the use of objecting? Why don't you let them come back to life and fight? But considering how dangerous Chun Zhao was, everyone silently agreed with Chun Zhao's suggestion. Of course, Jalanash was the only one who looked calm. Even she could easily deal with such a small scene, not to mention Chun Zhao. When one's power reached a certain level, numbers really couldn't restrain them. Unfortunately for Chun Zhao, Jalanash was also in the same situation. I'll finish up now. Jalanash opened her arms. Behind her, there was a strange scene drawn by the collision of flames and ice. Jalanash was advancing toward her goal with determination and speed. The world's top elemental sorcerer. Of course, she wasn't one right now. She wasn't even in the top 10. But she believed that in the next 10 years, she would have the chance to reach this height. Ice and fire intertwined, creating a surreal visual impact. Palm Zizi and Darlene Lopez's pupils contracted. Jalanash gave them a sense of danger. Palm Zizi attacked Jalanash first, but he didn't use the most primitive lightning attack. Instead, he controlled the falling bullets around him and shot them at Jalanash. Palm Zizi used electricity to create a huge and powerful electromagnetic field. Suddenly, Jalanash's body was covered in her own flames. The next moment, Her body was covered in a layer of elemental scale armor. When the metal bullets landed on her skin, they all melted and changed shape. Before they even got close, they turned into liquid metal. Fire Dragon Body. It was the ultimate form of fire magic. Cultivating this spell didn't just require powerful spells. There was something else that was necessary. Fire Dragon Blood. This was an extremely rare and precious magic material in the outside world. It was basically a commodity in the supernatural organization. The body of the fire dragon allowed the spellcaster to transform into a form similar to the fire dragon. Not only did it have extremely strong defensive power, but it also had a powerful defensive ability. It didn't just have powerful defense, it also had powerful physical attacks. Jallanash's power wasn't out of Chun Zhao's expectations, but Nair was terrified. When did his childhood playmate and little sister become so terrifying? Jallanash didn't use her fire dragon body to advance further. The flames on her body extinguished immediately, replaced by an extremely cold dragon body. This was her self-created ice dragon body. Before this, there wasn't such a spell in the spiritual world. Through modifying some magic formulas and modifying magic materials, as well as countless attempts, she finally succeeded in creating this spell. Ice Dragon Body was almost complete, but it wasn't perfect yet. Of course, this kind of opponent was more than enough to deal with a situation like this. Chapter 2795. Ice Dragon Body and Fire Dragon Body were opposites, but the principles and training methods were the same. They both needed the dragon's blood as the initial medium. Nevertheless, Ice Dragon Body made up for some of the flaws of Fire Dragon Body, and this was under the condition that Ice Dragon Body wasn't complete yet. One had to admit that Jallanash's magic talent and talent were being displayed bit by bit with Chun Zhao support. Covered in Ice Dragon Body, Jallanash pressed her arms down, and the Ice Dragon claws landed on the ground too. Instantly, extremely cold ice engulfed a radius of a few hundred meters. Even Chun Zhao had to hide in the sky so that he wouldn't be frozen. An AR and Body both stood on the roof of the car. Elemental magic was the magic that Chun Zhao yearned for the most when he first came into contact with the spiritual world. Elemental magic gathered almost all of Chun Zhao's fantasies about magic. It was extremely beautiful and powerful at the same time. One could say that elemental magic was synonymous with destruction. There were defensive spells in elemental magic too. However, when people heard about elemental magic, they first thought of violent flames, howling winds, cracked ground, and huge waves. Chun Zhao had to reach the Shangqing realm to be able to create such destructive power. But Jallanash was still very far away from Shangqing state. She already had such terrifying destructive power. This was elemental magic. Of course, this kind of frozen area with a diameter of several hundred meters was just a frozen area. In reality, it wasn't very lethal. If it was another opponent, Jallanash probably wouldn't be able to gain an advantage. But neither Paul Mazzisi nor Darlene Lopez were very strong. They were about as strong as Body and hadn't fully developed their abilities either. But they were facing Jallanash, who'd been playing magic since she was young. Paul Mazzisi's attacks were mainly lightning attacks, magnetic fields, and metal attacks. These two didn't have any effect on Jallanash. Jallanash's Ice Dragon Body and Fire Dragon Body kept switching. The dragon's high magic resistance was also inherited by these two types of magic. One could say that Jallanash now had all the advantages of an elemental mage and made up for all their disadvantages. Chun Zhao glanced at Body. Does the England gang allow colleagues to date? Some companies even forbade office romance. Logically speaking, for an industry like theirs, didn't they first have to kill their wives to prove their Tao? Why were they still allowed to date? Bodhi was very dissatisfied with Chun Zhao's behavior. He was still in a mood to chat with him before the battle. While others were fighting for their lives over there, he was leisurely and contented here. It was very intolerable. Mr. Moreau doesn't care, said Bodhi with his face tied. Suddenly, ice spikes rose from the ground, and then the ice spikes exploded. Darlene Lopez screamed. Her thigh was hit by the splashing ice, and a large piece of flesh was cut off. Palm ZC wanted to help, but with Jalanash in front of him, there was nothing he could do. Using the metal pieces, he used magnetic force to form a metal barrier, temporarily blocking the flying ice shards. But in the face of Jalanash's terrifying lethality, he could only struggle on his deathbed. Jalanash was too strong. He was so powerful that no one could resist him. Jalanash seemed to be tired of playing and wanted to change to another spell. Jalanash held Nash's palms together, and a huge amount of magic surged through her body. A huge red eye appeared above Jalanash's head. Pop! Instantly, a death ray shot out from the red eye. However, this death ray was much more powerful than a normal death ray. The death ray swept across, and hundreds of trees in front of them were instantly cut in half. Paul Mazzisi and Darlene Lopez were also lying on the ground, which was how they managed to dodge the attack. But they were also scared out of their wits. This kind of attack wasn't meant for humans at all. If it landed on a human, it would be no different from a missile or a cigarette. But after a round of 90-degree sweeps, Jalanash's second attack was coming. This time, she adjusted her angle. It seemed like she wanted to end the battle completely. Suddenly, two beams of light shot down from the sky and enveloped Palm ZC and Darlene Lopez. At the same time, they blocked Jalanash's death ray. Chun Zhao's eyes widened. It's here. Chun Zhao suddenly flashed before the two beams. He reached out to grab Palm ZC and Darlene Lopez, who were in the light. However, when Chun Zhao's palms were at the elementary level, he felt that the two beams contained indescribably great power. He actually couldn't break through the protection of the two immediately. Chun Zhao's power suddenly increased by 10 times. The beams dimmed a lot and flickered unstably. Chun Zhao sensed a long-lost sense of familiarity from the beam of light. This power was very similar to the god of strength that Chun Zhao had felt before. The two should be very closely related. Chun Zhao finally broke through the beams. Everyone heard the sound of something shattering. Chun Zhao's hands also grabbed Palm ZC and Darlene Lopez. Just then, another 4 beams of light fell from the sky. This time, they didn't envelop anyone. Instead, 4 figures were teleported over. These 4 figures were not humans, but pure energy bodies. But they all wore golden armor and held knives, spears, swords, and axes. Without a word, they started attacking Chun Zhao directly. Chun Zhao first dragged Palm ZC and Darlene Lopez out of the light and tossed them before Jalanash. At the same time, he raised his arm and punched the knife-wielding golden energy body. At the same time, the knife-wielding golden energy body slashed at Chun Zhao's shoulder. The golden-armored energy body didn't do anything other than creating a few sparks on Chun Zhao's shoulder. On the other hand, Chun Zhao's punch destroyed the golden-armored energy body directly. The golden armor was also distorted by Chun Zhao's punch. The energy body inside didn't die, but the armor was damaged and he was affected too. But he wasn't alone. Chun Zhao hadn't gotten his arm back yet. The other 3 golden-armored energy bodies attacked. The axe-wielding one lifted the axe, and it landed on Chun Zhao's arm. Of course, the result was that a corner of the axe was broken while Chun Zhao was still unharmed. These energy bodies were probably god of power and weren't weak. Then, they gathered god of power through their magical golden armor. But if they wanted to defeat Chun Zhao with just these 4, it was a bit ridiculous. Chun Zhao didn't destroy the 4 golden-armored energy bodies directly because he wanted to collect the spoils of war. Otherwise, there wouldn't be anything left of them now. He also wanted to test it and see if he could gain more. Unfortunately, Chun Zhao knew nothing about the energy they contained. Apart from destroying them, he couldn't do anything else. Chapter 2796. These bodies of energy weren't weak, but they weren't that strong either. Any one of them could probably last more than 10 minutes against Jalanash. But in front of Chun Zhao, they really weren't enough. But to completely destroy them, Chun Zhao had to use up all their divine power. Every time Chun Zhao destroyed their golden armor, their divine power would be restored. But divine power wasn't limitless, so it wasn't impossible to completely destroy them. Chun Zhao hadn't completely destroyed them yet, because he needed to study divine power. He even wanted to collect it. Unfortunately, he couldn't find a way to do so. Even if he used the suction power of the small world, he couldn't extract it. This wasn't any kind of energy that Chun Zhao knew of. Of course, Chun Zhao had also considered bringing the golden armor back. But if it was really that easy, then Chun Zhao wouldn't have to worry anymore. Once Chun Zhao restrained the golden armor, the divine power would be depleted even faster. A moment later, Chun Zhao had destroyed 2 bodies of energy. The remaining 2 had used up 70 to 80% of their divine power. Chun Zhao wasn't in a hurry to destroy the 2 bodies of energy. Instead, he waited to see if there would be reinforcements. Unfortunately, Chun Zhao didn't see any after waiting for a long time. One of the bodies of energy had already used up all its divine power. It froze on the spot, losing its original spirit. The other was still moving, but it was like a toy that was about to run out of battery. Its movements were also intermittent. Chun Zhao had also lost his patience. He destroyed it with a few punches and kicks. At the same time, he put away the golden armor. He didn't expect to get anything useful. But who knew? One had to have some dreams. Maybe there would be a miracle. As for Palm Zexi and Darlene Lopez, they were already frightened by Chun Zhao's battle with the 4 bodies of energy. They were Milo Tanzik Williams's trusted subordinates. Of course, they knew what the 4 bodies of energy were. That was why they were shocked that Chun Zhao could actually defeat them. Chun Zhao wasn't very satisfied with the operation this time. Of course, this was just the beginning. As long as Milo Tanzik Williams didn't want to reshuffle the entire L.A., then he wouldn't be a coward for the rest of his life. Chun Zhao would purge all of Los Angeles in the shortest time possible and force them to show themselves. Unless the other party really wanted to be a coward until the end, Chun Zhao really couldn't do anything. Let's go. You 2 get in my car. I think we have a lot to talk about. Palm Zexi and Darlene Lopez got into Chun Zhao's car obediently. This car hasn't been driven for a long time. I hope you won't damage it. Don't even dirty it. Palm Zexi and Darlene Lopez were speechless. She didn't know how to reply. However, the car did look very new. In fact, Chun Zhao had bought this gray supercar for more than half a year. However, he had only driven it recently because the blue supercar he drove last time was blown up by Tim. Do you know where Milo Tanzik Williams is hiding? Chun Zhao asked. The 2 of them shook their heads at the same time. It wasn't that they didn't want to say it, but they really didn't know. They also guessed that Bodhi might be in the same situation as them. Since Bodhi had admitted defeat, there was no reason for them to persist. To them, there was no difference between being loyal to Milo and Chun Zhao. What are those 4 energy bodies? Mr. Milo made them. He said they're the god of war, Ares' holy armor. Holy armor? Chun Zhao complained. What a terrible name. It's better to call it Saint Seiya. The 2 lowered their heads. No one knew what they were thinking. That Milo Tanzik Williams can actually make this thing? Chun Zhao was surprised by what Palm Zexi and Darlene Lopez had said. Putting aside the difficulty of making this thing, he was sure that the holy armor contained divine power. That Milo Tanzik Williams could actually make this thing. That meant that he also had divine power. Had he also obtained God's authority? Or was he a demigod? It was even possible that he was the one who had defeated Ares. And Milo Tanzik Williams might just be an identity he used to deceive others. All these were possible. But for now, Chun Zhao didn't have any more information. I heard from Bodhi that he's the only one active in L.A. Why are you here? Bodhi originally came out to purchase supplies, but he disappeared after he came out. On the 3rd day after he disappeared, which was last night, we were sent here. In addition to taking over Bodhi's mission, we are also responsible for investigating Bodhi's whereabouts. Today, we received news that Bodhi is wantonly attacking the peripheral gang members, so we concluded that he betrayed Mr. Moreau, Paul Mazzisi said. Then does your Mr. Milo not have any way to control you? Chun Zhao was a bit confused. If it was a normal faction, if it was a normal organization like the Supernatural organization, it would be a stable, cooperative relationship. Everyone came together for the same ideals and suitable environment. Naturally, there wouldn't be anything like control. But the core members of the England gang didn't have very strong bonds. Most of them were tied together by power and benefits. Therefore, Milo Tanzik Williams couldn't have no restrictions on him. Yes, he said that if he can give us power, he can take it back, Darlene Lopez said. In the past, some people had their power taken back by him, but he needs to face us and touch us at the same time. What's with the 4 holy armors? Why did they suddenly appear? Before Mr. Milo sent us to L.A., he gave us something to ask for help. Darlene and I both have one. Paul took out a golden stone the size of a finger. If we're in danger, we just need to send our power in and we'll be saved. I did it twice. The first time was the light beam that teleported us, and the second time was the holy armors. But before this, we didn't know it would be like this. Other than you, is there anyone else active in L.A.? Chen Zhao asked. There should be, Paul Mzizi said, but we don't know who exactly it is. Mr. Milo might be looking for something in L.A. Darlene Lopez suddenly interrupted. After Mr. Moreau came to Los Angeles, he went to 2 auctions and robbed the collections of 4 collectors. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.